Chapter 319. Just when she was anxious, a Maserati stopped steadily in front of her. The window was lowered, and a handsome young man's feminine face appeared. Yin Shirshir frowned slightly and recognized him at a glance. No, it was her. Jun Emo lived in the villa next to hers. Seeing her car stop, Yin Shirshir said in a friendly manner, "Hello." Jun Emo took off her glasses and glanced at her with her beautiful eyes. Her thin lips curled up slightly. "Get in." Yin Shirshir was a little dumbfounded by these two simple words. What do you mean? It's hard to get a taxi here." Her voice was clear and deep with a hint of hoarseness. It was a kind of feminine between genders. If one didn't listen carefully, it would be difficult to tell her gender. "Aren't you rushing to Huanyu for an interview? It's on the way." Even though it was a little abrupt, time was of the essence. She couldn't care less about being pretentious and immediately nodded. "Thank you." She opened the door and sat in the back seat. Jun Emo skillfully turned the steering wheel and stepped on the accelerator. The car sped away from Xiangti Walk. Yin Shirshir put her bag aside and looked around curiously. Her gaze fell on the handsome face in the rearview mirror. The reason why a woman was described as beautiful was because Jun Emo, whether it was her temperament or her dressing, revealed a femininity that was different between men and women. She had the calmness and grace of a man, but also the exquisiteness and delicacy of a woman. This handsomeness had nothing to do with gender. Especially that pair of long and narrow eyes. They were deep and charming. She even felt a little stunned for a moment. In the rearview mirror, Jun Emo glanced at her from the corner of her eye and met her gaze. Yin Shirshir looked away awkwardly. The car was cold and damp. After a light rain last night, the weather in the early morning was a little cold. The air in the car was cold, and she was only wearing a thin shirt, so it was inevitable that she felt a little cold. Jun Emo glanced at Yin Shirshir's uneasy face in the rearview mirror and asked, "Cold?" "Yes. A little." Jun Emo looked straight ahead again. She didn't say anything but turned on the heater. Not long after, the carriage was filled with warmth. Yin Shirshir was touched by her thoughtfulness and immediately thanked her. Jun Mo's lips curled up, but she didn't say anything. She just took out a cigarette from the cigarette box and lit it skillfully. The lighter was a limited edition commemorative God of Fire by Zippo, and it was hard to find one on the market. A wisp of smoke filled the carriage. The smell of smoke was not strong, nor was it pungent. Instead, it smelled good. At least, it was not repulsive. The entire journey was silent. The car sped along, and the scenery outside the window flashed by. "Your name is Yin Shirshir, right?" Her eyes lit up. "How do you know my name?" "I saw you at the banquet." Jun Emo was silent for a moment, as if she was considering her words. In the end, she still said two simple words, "Very beautiful." Yin Shirshir blushed and smiled. "Thank you." He was a little surprised. Although Jun Emo looked a little arrogant and cold, she wasn't as unapproachable and unexpectedly friendly as she looked on the surface. Jun Emo said, "It's a good opportunity to sign with Huanyu. You have to cherish it." "Yes, I will." The car quickly drove into Huanyu Tower. "I'll drop you off here. I'll go park the car." After saying that, Jun Emo drove the car into the garage. Yin Shirshir couldn't help but feel flattered by her kindness. It was like a dream. It was a little unreal. Chapter 320. After all, apart from Xiao Shui, there were very few women who treated her so well since she was a child. Perhaps it was because she was not good at socializing. The darkness of her childhood made her cautious in dealing with people and other aspects. Hence, she did not have many friends. Therefore, she cherished this rare kindness very much. She looked down at the time. There was still some time before the interview. When she walked out of the elevator, Qin Zhou seemed to have just arrived at the company. When he saw her, he was a little surprised. "Ah, Shirshir, you're here so early?" "Yes. I couldn't get a taxi at the entrance. Fortunately, someone sent me here in time." "Someone sent you? Who?" Qin Zhou was stunned. "What a coincidence." "I think it's Jun Emo." She learned her name from Yu. "Jun Emo?" Qin Zhou frowned slightly. "Where do you live now?" "Xiangti Walk." Qin Zhou was stunned. Xiangti Walk was a famous mansion in the capital. Where did she live? "That's a mansion. Why do you live there?" I won the lottery, Yun Shirshir said awkwardly. You're so lucky. Qin sighed sincerely. He led her into the office and suddenly thought of something. Do you have a driver's license? Yes, but I don't know how to drive. Yun Shirshir, can you be any more stupid? Qin said mercilessly. Yun Shirshir said helplessly. Are you blaming me for not knowing how to drive? Well, okay. After you sign the contract, I'll arrange a car for you to take you to and from work. Qin said and brought her into the office. He filled in some information for her and patiently reminded her. The person who will be interviewing you later is Huanyu's entertainment director. He's famous for being strict and nicknamed Ji Yanluo. You have to be careful during the interview. Yes, I will. Yun Shirshir finished filling in the information and suddenly looked up. If I sign the contract, will I have my own manager? There is. Qin took her information and looked through it carefully. Who will it be? Hee, of course it'll be me. Qin smiled and said, Xingzhe specifically asked me to take care of you. If you sign the contract with me, I'll take good care of you. Qin was Huanyu's ace manager. Whether it was his skills, resources, or background, they were all top-notch. Just making Gu Xingzhe famous was an achievement that no one in Huanyu could compare to. Even a natural idol like Gu Xingzhe would not be able to reach his current status without Qin support. She had to admit that he was a very powerful person. If Gu Xingzhe was the king of the entertainment industry, then Qin could be described as the prime minister who supported the emperor wholeheartedly. Gu Xingzhe was able to get a role in a Hollywood blockbuster as soon as he debuted. He had signed several fashion commercials and produced a large number of albums. The reason was that Qin had a considerable amount of resources. What was the most important thing in the entertainment industry? Arranged in order: resources, background, strength, talent, aptitude, and appearance. Appearance could be remolded, and it was fine if one was not strong enough. However, resources and background were often things that could not be obtained even if one begged for it. People in the entertainment industry never dared to say harsh words and promote whoever they wanted. However, Qin had the confidence to do so. No matter who it was, as long as he said harsh words and supported them with all his heart, they would definitely become famous in his hands. Many popular artists had thrown him an olive branch and even hired him with a lot of money, but Qin was unmoved. Chapter 321. He only had one artist, Gu Xingzhe, under him. If he spent all his resources on him, others would be jealous. The entertainment industry was full of dangers. Gu Xingzhe was naturally worried about assigning Yun Shirshir to another manager. He was afraid that he would be devoured until not even his bones were left. Therefore, Qin personally came to manage Yun Shirshir. Resources were another matter. At least with Qin methods and background, he was definitely a reliable manager. Qin urged, fill in these documents first. The director's office is next door. I'll bring you to see him. There were only 2 offices on the 18th floor of Huanyu. One was for Jilin, and the other was for Qin. It was obvious that Qin had a pivotal position in Huanyu. Yun Shirshir had just finished filling in a stack of documents when Qin took out another stack of documents like magic. She was stunned. Why are there so many? These are all model contracts. Take a closer look. After the interview, the director will sign it. Is it a contract to sell myself? She rolled her eyes suspiciously. Qin rolled his eyes back and smiled evilly. Yes, it's a contract to sell yourself. Hurry up and sign it, and you'll be mine. Qin was good in every way, but he was usually a little indecent and sharp-tongued. She vaguely remembered the last time at Empress Fashion Club, he had stabbed Xiao Dong of the Xiao group with a few words. Xiao Dong had a pair of fierce eyes that wanted to destroy him. Yun Shirshir suddenly said strangely, You seem to be very free today. Where's Xingzhe? He went to Milan for a fashion show and will return the day after tomorrow. Qin said and suddenly teased. Why? Do you miss him? Don't talk nonsense. Yun Shirshir said angrily. Qin snorted coldly. How heartless. After a pause, he gossiped again. To be honest, Xingzhe seems to be a little too concerned about you. Sai, look at him. He went to Milan to watch the show, and left me alone in the company to deal with the mess. Mess. Qin stretched out his finger and rubbed the space between his eyebrows. With a tired face he said, "Yeah, what a huge mess." Naturally, he would not tell Yin Shishir that Gu Xingze had offended Yang Shouqing because of her. He hadn't been able to sleep well for the past few days as he had been dealing with this matter. He didn't know what was wrong with that kid. Of all the people he could have offended, he chose to offend Yang Shouqing, the boss of the European king. During the most glorious period of Hong Kong movies, Yang Shouqing had an unshakable position in the entertainment industry. Even though Hong Kong's movies were gradually declining, Elder Yang's status was still there. He actually went to injure someone. He didn't mind the trouble, but the trouble was that if the Gu family found out about his actions, there would be some criticism. Gu Xingze's brother was even harder to please than Master Yang. He was in a terrible fix. What happened? Just as Yin Shishir finished speaking, there was a sudden commotion outside the door. Qin frowned and opened the door, only to see Tang Yu blocked at the door of the director's office. She wanted to enter but was stopped by Ji Lin's assistant. Tang Yu's assistant and Tang Yu were in a deadlock, staring at each other. Why is she here? Didn't she already terminate her contract? Qin sneered and muttered. She still dares to look for Ji Yanluo. Is she looking for a scolding? Chapter 322. Tang Yu? Terminated the contract? Yin Shishir gossiped for once. Why did Tang Yu terminate the contract? Qin turned around and complained. My dear miss, don't you read the entertainment news on a regular basis? In any case, you're someone who's about to enter the entertainment industry. You should at least pay attention to the news in the industry. Ah. Yin Shishir was ashamed. I don't usually watch TV. You, tell me. Yin Shishir's gossipy soul was burning fiercely. Qin sneered. What else can it be? The news about her unspoken rules is all over the city. Huan Yu has always valued the image of its artists. Now that she's notorious, who else can they kick out but her? Not only that, as an artist, a few advertisers have withdrawn their contracts with her. The few movies she signed were forced to change actors midway. The losses are huge. She even has to pay the liquidated damages to the company. Yin Shishir's lips twitched. Unspoken rules? She was fine when he saw her at the cocktail party. In just a few days, such a big change happened? Things were still the same, but people had changed. Slap. Qin was too lazy to explain so much. He just threw a stack of newspapers in front of her. Yin Shishir flipped through it and frowned in surprise. Wow, that was too explosive. But what she didn't know was that it was all fate's fault. If Mu Yaja hadn't arrived in time, she would have been the one to appear on the headlines. But a certain someone was still oblivious to the ins and outs of the matter, and was still reading the newspapers gloatingly. The newspapers published the headlines for a few days, reporting on this incident. Even now, the news was still hot and had been the topic of conversation for the public. Tang Yu returned to the villa with Huan Yu's top management late at night, and didn't leave. The reporters arrived in time. What was more shocking was that the two of them were so anxious that they forgot to close the curtains. The reporters took photos and videos and spread them all over the internet. It was too late to ban them. Actually, after the incident, Tang Yu's studio secretly contacted the paparazzi and offered to buy all the videos and photos in their hands at a sky-high price. They wanted to destroy the evidence and at least suppress the limelight at the critical moment. Unfortunately, these reporters refused no matter what. Even with 7 figures, they could only buy a few photos. Who's afraid of who? Their photos had already been bought by a mysterious investor at a high price. He wanted to ruin Tang Yu's reputation. Tang Yu's studio's crisis was just a last-ditch struggle. In just one night, Tang Yu's fans on Weibo had dropped by a few million. At this stage, she was still losing fans. Tang Yu was dumbfounded when he saw that his path to stardom was destroyed. He could not recover from the setback. That was not all. Blessings never come in pairs, and misfortunes never come singly. Huan Yu received several notices in succession. A few advertisers proposed to terminate their contracts. Tang Yu's roles in the TV series and movies that she was filming in were removed. Even if it was a finished film, there was not a single bit of her scene left. Now that her reputation was in tatters, Huan Yu was facing a sky-high penalty for breaching the contract. The higher-ups were furious. For companies, artists were like products. Without popularity, they would have no value. Huanyu Entertainment and Tang Yu's studio laid their cards on the table and proposed to terminate the contract. Tang Yu was about to face a sky-high penalty of 9 figures. How pitiful. A pitiful person must have something hateful, Yin Shirshir said. Chapter 323. Stop fooling around. Yin Shirshir slapped his hand away. Just as Tang Yu was feeling depressed, she saw that Qin Zhou's office was open. She rolled her eyes and walked in with a smile. Nobody knew what she was thinking. Chairman Qin. When she saw him, she would first sweetly compliment him. Qin Zhou held shares in Huanyu. Therefore, artists and staff who were of a lower level had to respectfully address him as Chairman Qin, even if they weren't A-listers. Qin Zhou knew that she was up to no good. He rolled his eyes lazily. What? Tang Yu was about to speak when she entered the room. She was dumbfounded when she saw Yin Shirshir, who was sitting at the side and signing an agreement. Yin Shirshir. Why are you here? It's none of your business. Mind your own business. Qin Zhou reminded her coldly. Tang Yu remembered what she was here for. She said coquettishly, Chairman Qin, you have to help me. Her soft voice gave Qin Zhou goosebumps all over his body. Don't act coquettishly if you don't know how to. As soon as he spoke, he felt a chill run down his spine and goosebumps appeared all over his body. Help you with what? I don't know which B*TCH did this to me. My reputation is ruined, and the company wants to terminate my contract. Chairman Qin, you have a lot of say in the company. Also, you're such a good friend of Director Ji. Can you talk to Director Ji for me? Tang Yu felt wrong too. She was a little drunk at the cocktail party that day. In order to seek a better future, she clung onto Muyaja, thinking that she could climb into his bed. Little did she expect that he would throw her into a car and drive her to Li Wenqing's villa. Li Wenqing was one of Huanyu's top executives and one of the company's shareholders. He also had a seat on the board of directors. He had played with many women. In a way, he could be considered Tang Yu's old flame. They had been together for a while. The few movie contracts that Tang Yu accepted were all resources provided by him. Tang Yu was a little surprised to see him. However, she thought that it was all arranged and that he had personally picked her. She did not suspect anything. Li Wenqing was also a little suspicious when he saw her. Didn't he personally pick the newcomer from the cocktail party? Her name was Yin Shirshir. Why did he send Tang Yu instead? However, in the middle of the night, he had nowhere to vent his lust. As soon as Tang Yu entered the room, the two of them were entangled together. After that, he didn't expect that he would be plotted against. The pictures and texts were well illustrated, and the evidence was conclusive. No matter how capable the public relations team was, they were at their wits' end. It would be difficult for them to clear their names. Qin Zhou had a headache and waved his hand. Get lost. Don't bother me. I'm also in a mess. I can't even save myself. There's still a mess that gives CEO Qin a headache. Qin Zhou was annoyed. Tang Yu, now that things have come to this, nobody can save you. If you really want me to point you out a way out, seeing that you're young and have good potential, I'll be kind and introduce you to a film contract. Tang Yu's eyes brightened. He couldn't hide his excitement. Really? President Qin, I knew you wouldn't leave me in the lurch. What kind of movie is it? Qin Zhou smiled evilly. Golden Lotus 3D. F***CK. Playing with her? Jinping Mei 3D? That was a third-rate movie, okay? What was this? What kind of kindness was this? He was obviously kicking her when she was down. Was he waiting to see her embarrass herself? No matter what, she was still a B-list starlet. She was also a popular teen idol. How could he let her star in such a low-class movie? Tang Yu was so angry that her face turned red. Chapter 324. I'm a teen idol, and you want me to star in a third-rate film? Tang Yu said angrily. Oh, you're still flattering yourself? Teen idol? You made such a big scene this time, and the video is all over the city. Who hasn't seen you naked? Why are you being so pretentious? Qin Zhou mocked. Tang Yu was speechless. Don't underestimate this resource. How many female stars are lining up to be in it? For a role in it, they're fighting so hard. Don't you care? Qin Zhou said disapprovingly. This was a blatant humiliation. Tang Yu felt so ashamed that she couldn't show her face. She said angrily, President Qin, are you hitting me when I'm down? Qin Zhou pretended to be wronged. Oh, you're biting me. I'm helping you out of kindness. And you're saying that I'm hitting you when you're down. Really, humph. Recommending you to this film is already a compliment to you. Don't you know what your reputation is? Even if it's for my sake, the director might not choose you. Tang Yu was so angry that she stomped her feet. Suddenly, she glanced at Yun Shirshir from the corner of her eye. The latter's pen paused, and she felt a chill run down her spine. She looked up and saw Tang Yu glaring at her. What was this? She got shot even when she was lying down? Yun Shirshir, what are you doing in Huanyu? Signing a contract. Yun Shirshir said coldly. Signing a contract? Tang Yu was shocked. You signed a contract with Huanyu just like that? Usually, it was impossible for a newcomer to sign a contract with Huanyu Entertainment right after their debut, unless they had a strong background. No matter how good their qualifications were, they were the first in history to sign a contract with the headquarters right after their debut. There were 2 big studios under Huanyu. Usually, newcomers who just debuted would sign a contract with a studio first. Huanyu would only seriously consider signing a contract when they had some fame. As the dream factory of the entertainment industry, Huanyu's requirements to sign a contract were very high. Tang Yu's eyes were sharp. She saw the contract in her hand. It was indeed a model contract, and there was also a signing letter. She was so jealous that her eyes turned red. It was scary. B*TCH. I don't know what kind of despicable method she used. Who are you talking about? Without waiting for Qin Zhou to speak, Yun Shirshir asked coldly, Watch your mouth. Tang Yu was stunned. At the banquet, Yun Shirshir was considered a gentle and soft persimmon. Why was his mouth so sharp today? He was no longer as submissive as before. Or was it because she had lost her power that even a newcomer who had yet to debut did not put her in her eyes? When a tiger leaves the plains, it will be bullied by dogs. Her lips curled into a smile. It wasn't that she bullied the weak and feared the strong. Previously at the cocktail party, she was worried about her image. As a newcomer, she naturally couldn't show off too much at such an occasion. Otherwise, offending one person was tantamount to offending a group of people. In the entertainment industry, seniority was the most important thing. If a newcomer who had yet to debut was too ostentatious, it was inevitable that he would be surrounded and suppressed. However, now that they were in private, what was there to talk about? You've got it upside down. Now I'm the tiger and you're the dog. So what if I bullied you? Haven't you heard of the saying, beat a dog when it's down? Qin Zhou was surprised. This girl's mouth was quite vicious. Where did she learn it from? You. Tang Yu was so angry that she raised her hand. Qin Zhou quickly stopped her. Oh my God. This is my office. How dare you behave so atrociously? Chapter 325. It's not that I want to nag at you. But what's the point of arguing with her? She's barefoot now, so she's not afraid of you. Don't pester her endlessly. Oh. Yun Shirshir nodded. Tang Yu was so angry that her eyes almost popped out. You, get lost. Qin Zhou waved his hand as if he was shooing away a fly. Don't dirty my precious feng shui. What's the fuss about? Outside the office, Jilin stood with his arms crossed and looked at Qin Zhou and the others coldly. Yun Shirshir looked toward the voice. The rumored director Ji Yanluo was actually younger than she had expected. He was about 28 years old and wore a mature business suit. His hairstyle was meticulously styled, making him look especially energetic. He was handsome and had eyebrows like stars. His facial features were more regular and he looked very mature. However, he was just as the rumors said. He was serious and his face was cold. His aura was intimidating and his eyes were dignified. Tang Yu, you still have the face to step into Huanyu? If you have the time to pester me, why don't you think about it yourself? Your studio can't even handle the most basic public relations crisis. Jilin said coldly. Currently, Huanyu's decision to deal with you is only to terminate your contract. If you continue to pester us endlessly, you'll have to face Huanyu's ban. Every word was like a gem and sent chills down her spine. Banning order. Once Huan Yu's ban came out, she would have no chance to make a comeback. Tang Yu was still making her final struggle. Director Ji, can't you give me another chance? This time, there was a villain who plotted against me. It won't happen again. I've been loyal to Huan Yu for so many years. Even if I didn't make any contributions, I've at least worked hard. Next time? There's a next time? Ji Lin said mercilessly. You don't have any acting skills or EQ. Not only that, but your IQ is also so low. Haven't you caused enough trouble for me? You're worthless now. Get lost. Director Ji. Shut up. Ji Lin said angrily and pointed at the elevator. Get lost. Tang Yu's entire body withered. Seeing that there was no room for negotiation, he could only leave dejectedly. Before she left, she turned around and glared at Yun Shirshir. Then, she stomped her feet and left. Ji Lin turned around and scolded his assistant. Do you know how to do things? Wouldn't you ask the security to chase away such a person? The assistant lowered his head with a mournful expression. He accepted the scolding and did not say a word. Yun Shirshir was stunned. This Ji Yanluo had a fiery temper. He probably worked overtime again last night. Working overtime. Yes. After the banquet, he had to clean up the mess. I didn't sleep well last night, and Tang Yu shamelessly came here to make trouble. How could I not be angry? With that, Qin Zhou immediately picked up the contract letter that Yun Shirshir had filled out neatly and walked up to her in a flirtatious manner. Old Ji, you're so angry early in the morning. Be careful not to hurt your kidneys. Yun Shirshir. Ji Lin rolled his eyes. Have you dealt with Gu Xing's matter? This time, it was Qin Zhou's turn to be listless. No. Then you have the nerve to come and see me? Ji Lin poked his head. Take care of your artist. Don't think that he can look down on old Master Yang just because he has the Gu family's support. Qin Zhou said gloomily. I went to the hospital to see old Master Yang yesterday. His injury is not serious. It's just a small injury. He said that he wanted me to hand the person over to him, and he would deal with it himself. Chapter 326. Qin Zhou brought Yun Shirshir into the director's office and retreated from the room. Sit. Wait for one more person. With that, he picked up the file and looked at it. Another person? Who could it be? Was she not the only one who signed the contract today? Yun Shirshir sat on the chair and looked around carefully. The decoration of the office was simple, and everything was neatly arranged. There were several celebrity portraits on the wall. They were all A-list celebrities under Huan Yu. Among them, Gu Xing's portrait was among them. There were many books and albums on the bookshelf. There was a short table in front of the sofa with a high-end tea set on it. There was a knock on the door. Yun Shirshir turned her head in confusion and saw that it was Jun Mo who walked in. Seeing that it was her, Yun Shirshir smiled. Jun Mo nodded, closed the door, and sat down beside her. Director Ji. Ji Lin raised his wrist and looked at his watch. He said coldly, You're always on time. You won't appear until the last minute. Jun Mo said indifferently, I just had a smoke outside. You're quite free and elegant? Ji Lin said. Jun Mo's lips curled as she turned to look at Yun Shirshir and slowly reached out her hand. Hi. Her voice was not very warm or intimate, but there was a faint smile in her eyes. Yun Shirshir smiled and shook her hand. Hello. Yes. Everyone is here. Let's start. Ji Lin sat at his desk and held the contract filled out by Yun Shirshir. He asked indifferently, Yun Shirshir. Yes, Director. Have you read the contents of the contract carefully? I have, she replied. Do you have any objections? No objections. Ji Lin asked a few more questions, and Yun Shirshir answered them one by one. As a student of media college, Ji Lin was very satisfied with her professionalism and conduct. But in the end, Ji Lin sternly stated a few conditions to her. Since you've read the contract carefully, you should be clear about the conditions. I hope you can abide by them. Understood. Ji Lin raised his head, looked at her deeply and slowly said, Your aptitude is very good, but I need to give you a word of advice. Yun Shirshir was all ears. Please speak. No matter what you were. But from the moment you signed the contract with Huan Yu, as a public figure, I hope you will be careful with your words and actions. Yin Shirshir was stunned. What happened just now? I don't want it to happen again. Yes, I understand. Perhaps your impression of the entertainment industry is still limited to the reports on TV and entertainment magazines. But here I still want to give you a piece of advice. As an artist, the company's arrangements are simple. Be obedient and do as you are told. Don't touch what you shouldn't touch. Don't make mistakes that you shouldn't, understand? Jun Mo was a little surprised. In her impression, this Ji Lin did not seem like a patient person. Yet he gave her advice. Did it seem like he was taking special care of her? Ji Lin turned to discuss the renewal of the contract with Jun Mo. Yin Shirshir listened at the side. It turned out that Jun Mo's contract with Huan Yu had expired. Her aptitude was very promising, and the company hoped that she could renew the contract. In addition, her previous manager was hospitalized with cancer, and the position had been empty. Ji Lin planned to assign her a new manager. Chapter 327. Among the many artists signed by Huan Yu, Junjun's talent was outstanding. She was a rock singer and had her own band. She had debuted for 5 years, and with her unique personality, outstanding appearance, and excellent singing skills, she had a group of awe-inspiring loyal fans. Her popularity was high, and she had always been the focus of Huan Yu's grooming. In the entertainment industry, if one was good at singing, they would act. Ji Lin's plan for her was to enter the film industry and transform into an actress. In the music industry, the popularity of rock singers did not last long. If they did not transform, their accumulated popularity would eventually decline. In the end, they came up with a plan. Ji Lin would manage Gu Xingze under his own name, and let Qin Zhou manage Yin Shirshir and Junjun. Without a doubt, this had been confirmed with Qin Zhou. Qin Zhou readily agreed. With the abundant resources in his hands, managing 2 newcomers was not a big problem. Gu Xingze was now at the peak of his popularity. He was about to set up his own record company, and the company would focus on planning for him. Qin Zhou, a general, could be considered to have retired after accomplishing his mission. Yin Shirshir was a little flattered. For a newcomer like her to sign a contract with Huan Yu right after her debut, and even be assigned under a top manager, was a beautiful thing that many people in the industry did not dare to dream of. Ji Lin called Qin Zhou in. Qin Zhou brought a few more contracts and asked them to fill them one by one. From now on, you are my people. Qin Zhou looked at them with satisfaction, his heart full of excitement. Ji Lin said, Qin Zhou, have you really thought it through? I have. Qin Zhou looked relaxed and calm, his handsome face showing calmness. I, Qin Zhou, have done my best to accompany Xingze until now. Now that Xingze has achieved success, I also want to make a comeback. As he said this, he smiled meaningfully. Men always have a strong desire to conquer, whether it's a woman or a career. After that day, the news of Qin Zhou and Gu Xingze terminating their contract spread like wildfire. Huan Yu's internal staff was shocked. It was undoubtedly a heavy bomb. Some people were happy, while others were worried. He was happy that Qin Zhou had terminated his contract with Gu Xingze. If he could work with this top manager, with the superior resources in his hands, he would definitely be able to ride the wind and soar. Unfortunately, it was rumored that Qin Zhou had managed a newcomer. But before the press conference, no one knew who this lucky newcomer was. There were also some people who were surprised. In the entertainment industry, water flowed down to the bottom, while people walked up to the top. Why didn't she rely on a superstar and now wanted to terminate her contract? That's a story for another day. Ji Lin put away Yin Shirshir and Junmo's contracts, stood up and walked to them. I hope you guys can work harder. Don't make me doubt my judgment. Junmo reached out and shook Ji Lin's hand. She looked confident and proud. Thank you, Director. Thank you for your appreciation, Director Ji. I will work hard. Yin Shirshir also shook hands with Ji Lin. Ji Lin sized her up from top to bottom. Remember, I don't look at the process. I only look at the results. Qin Zhou smiled and said, Old Ji, are you still worried about me? Don't worry. Junmo and Shirshir are in my hands. I will definitely give you a satisfactory answer. Before that, you have to clean up the mess first before we talk about anything else. Ji Lin said indifferently. Chapter 328. Before that, You have to clean up the mess first before we talk about anything else, Ji-lin said indifferently. Qin-zhou was instantly depressed again. At noon, Qin-zhou, Yun Shirshir, and Jun Mo had a simple lunch before taking a short break in the company. Jun Mo sat on the leather chair, adjusted it to a comfortable angle, and closed her eyes to rest. Qin-zhou led Yun Shirshir on a tour of Huanyu's headquarters building, and introduced it to her floor by floor. Huanyu's headquarters towered into the clouds, and was extremely spectacular. It was a full 50 floors high and was unreachable. It was Yun Shirshir's first time visiting this entertainment empire that was the focus of the world's attention. Huanyu had 2 major film and TV production companies and 3 authoritative media companies. Whether it was movies, TV series, or records, Huanyu had everything in one place. The huge entertainment empire was run in the entire building. As the famous Dream Factory, any name of the artistes signed by Huanyu was like thunder to one's ears. In today's entertainment industry, the 4 new female stars, the 4 ancient actors, Yang Mi, Han Yuyen, Yin Bingqing, Li Jiuxian, Lu Junyu. These hot names were all signed by Huanyu. Huanyu was no longer just a milestone. It was already an industry giant that monopolized the entertainment empire. Qin-zhou took her to the rehearsal room, recording studio, and interview hall. He also brought her to meet a few famous film and TV series producers and directors under Huanyu. Yun Shirshir's elegant manner of speaking left a deep impression on many people. Everyone had high hopes for this newcomer. Then, Qin-zhou gave her a general introduction of Huanyu's treatment. The treatment was unexpectedly good. The remuneration ratio on the contract was very generous. Generally speaking, the remuneration ratio for the artistes signed by Huanyu was generally 70% for the company and 30% for the artistes, because of the training and packaging of the newcomers. As for her share, it was 50-50. What did that mean? Let's say that according to the remuneration for the movie The Green Apple, Gu Xing's contract with Huanyu was 60% to 40%, and the remuneration was 50 million. Then the company would deduct 20 million from this basis, and the remaining 60%, which was 30 million, would fall into his pocket. This was already the highest treatment in Huanyu. She, on the other hand, was paid 5 million yuan. In her hands, she received a full 50%, which was 5 million yuan. Other than that, Huanyu would also provide a car for the artists to pick them up. She was given a Volkswagen Phaeton. Even if it was a newcomer who had just debuted, the company would do their best to reduce public exposure. Huanyu had done a lot of homework on how to protect their artists' privacy. Even the most highly trained paparazzi wouldn't be able to catch the slightest movement of an artist from Huanyu. As for the private photos of celebrities on the entertainment media websites, they were just celebrities seeking exposure and cooperating to create hype. What awaited her next was a long and intensive training course. One of the most important aspects was the cultivation of the actors. Yun Shirshir was outstanding whether it was in terms of external conditions, appearance, temperament, manners, or internal conditions, such as conversation, etiquette, and acting skills. He only lacked the tempering of his works. In the history of Huanyu, there had never been an artist who had both beauty and acting skills. It was also because of this that Ji-lin paid special attention to her. Chapter 329. In terms of public relations, how to deal with the tricky and demanding questions of the entertainment reporters, how to handle interviews, and a series of speaking techniques. The company required that the actors had to be fluent and flawless. Gu Xingza was a textbook example. No matter how demanding the questions were, he could rely on his good reflexes to fend them off. Even in the face of the all-pervasive media, he could handle it with ease. Tang Yu was a classic example of a negative example. She had good looks and good acting skills, but her EQ was extremely low and she spoke without thinking. Everyone knew how she ended up. She fell from being a godly detective to the bottom of the valley. In the current situation of the entertainment industry, artists were no longer the same as before, where they were held high and mighty. Even if you were the nation's goddess, a single mistake in your words would immediately attract an avalanche of anti-fans. Apart from that, there was a series of classes. Her schedule was packed to the brim for a whole month. Apart from that, the opening ceremony of the Green Apple was also imminent. Qinzhou informed her to go to the temporary filming set in 3 days to complete the trial photo shoot. In short, her schedule was packed to the brim with no gaps. The moment she received the schedule, she froze. It's so packed. Yin Shirshir protested a little. There were 30 days in a month, and 29 days were scheduled. The remaining day was to go to the filming set for the trial photo shoot. This schedule was unbelievably tight. Is this still considered full? Qinzhou chuckled. Then you haven't seen Gu Xing's schedule. His schedule? Was there a schedule more packed than hers? You haven't officially stepped into this industry, but I've already been merciful to you. Take a look at Gu Xing's schedule. Qinzhou passed Gu Xing's schedule to her lightly. Yin Shirshir glanced at it curiously and almost fainted. Half a month was only 15 days, but he had a total of 32 events scheduled. Apart from the events, he spent the rest of his time flying in the sky. He probably had very little sleep every day. She felt a little sorry for him. Celebrities looked glamorous on the surface, but she didn't know that they were so tired behind the scenes. She furrowed her brows and complained, "This is exploitation." Qinzhou complained, "What do you mean by exploitation? Shirshir, you might not know this, but to a celebrity, exposure means life. This is like the same product. One is placed in the front of the supermarket, the other is placed in the corner of the supermarket. Which one do you think will sell better?" "Of course it's the former," she said without hesitation. "As long as you understand." Qinzhou suddenly said in a low voice, "Shirshir, you have to remember that in this industry, you have to be careful with your words and actions. Just like what Yan Luoji said, if you accidentally offend someone, they might even ban you from the market. When that time comes, it won't be as simple as just lying in a corner." Yin Shirshir naturally understood the meaning of his words. When the time comes, I'll definitely be kicked into the warehouse to collect dust." "Smart." Qinzhou smiled. "Aren't you stupid? It's all thanks to President Qin's good teaching." "Naughty girl, you've got guts. Now you know how to make fun of people?" Qinzhou scolded with a smile. In the same batch of trainees, Yin Shirshir's name was especially prominent. Among the 15 newcomers, she was the only one who could sign a contract with Huanyu's headquarters. She had just debuted, and was already the #1 female lead in a gold medal director's movie. What made people jealous was that the moment she entered the company, she was assigned to the ace manager, Qinzhou. Chapter 330. Many people started to mutter in their hearts. What kind of background did this newbie have? It was obvious that Huanyu wanted to groom her. She had not even debuted, but she was already chosen by a famous director, and was given the role of the female lead. Lin Fengtian was a famous gold medal director in the entertainment industry. He had always been strict, but he actually chose an unknown newbie? In the history of the entertainment industry, there was no example of Lin Fengtian's movies not being popular. Many people racked their brains and still could not get a supporting role in his movies. Not only that, many celebrities were not qualified to be invited to Huanyu's annual cocktail party. Not only did Yun Shirshir receive Gu Xing's invitation, she even became Gu Xing's female companion. Putting all these aside, being able to directly sign a contract with Huanyu's headquarters made many people so jealous that they gritted their teeth. What was even more frightening was that she had an ace manager behind her. It would be a miracle if this newbie did not become popular. Among the newbies, many were jealous of her. She had not even debuted, but she already had such excellent resources. They could not wait to be jealous. Therefore, Yun Shirshir was inevitably ignored and questioned in the training class. However, she did not care at all. She had more opportunities than others. Any normal person would look at her with suspicion and jealousy. However, it was because of this that she had to work harder than them and cherish this opportunity more than they did. Strength was the best proof for her. After a week of high-intensity training, Yun Shirshir was completely exhausted. She was very tired, much more tired than when she went to work. Her body could not bear the burden. Even so, her willpower was considered to be the strongest in the entire class. Many people could not persevere in the face of hellish high-intensity training. The trainees in the training class were cut in batches. In less than a week, half of the trainees were cut. On this day, after the training class, Yun Shirshir walked to the lounge. She only felt that her head was heavy and her feet were light. She was still dizzy. The excessive pressure caused her to be unable to sleep well for several days. She muddle-headedly held onto the wall and groped her way to her lounge. She thought to herself, training classes have been packed to the brim for a month. Now it's only been a week, and she can't take it anymore. What will she do for the rest of the classes? Leaning against the door, Yin Shirshir touched the key with one hand. Under Qin Zhou's special care, she had her own private lounge. She turned on her phone and saw a missed call. She stared at Yu's name on the screen and couldn't help but reveal a gentle smile. For the next few days, the school was holding an international children's summer camp in Minghai City. She was not free, so Yin Yeqing accompanied the little lad. Just as he was about to dial the number back, his fingertips suddenly paused. This little guy should be having a good time right now. Now that she was busy with work, she rarely had time to go out with the little guy. It was rare for the school to hold a summer camp, so she would let him have a good time. Yin Shirshir closed her phone. Forget it, it's better not to disturb him. Opening the door, the room was brightly lit. She had just walked in when she heard a devilish voice leisurely say, "Welcome back, with pleasure." Yin Shirshir could not help but be shocked. Before she could react, she was on high alert. She turned around and looked outside the door nervously for a while before she slammed the door shut and locked it. Chapter 331. Muyaja, what are you doing here? Wasn't he supposed to be busy? On the sofa, Muyaja elegantly propped up his upper body. The lapel of his black shirt was slightly open, revealing his well-defined chest. He was wearing a pair of handsome, slim-fit trousers and a pair of expensive handmade leather shoes. His long legs were crossed elegantly, giving him a noble and unruly posture. She had to admit that his figure was very muscular and sexy. Every part of his body was perfect and well-proportioned. A silver necklace dangled between his collarbones, complementing his fair and flawless skin. It was very charming. He had flown to America a while ago and had just gotten off the plane today. His face was weary, and his black hair was slightly messy. It covered his sharp eyebrows and intertwined with his long and thick eyelashes, casting a shadow on his eyelids. Muyaja held a cigarette between his fingers, and the room was filled with a faint aroma. Yin Shirshir stood rooted to the ground and asked with a frown, "How did you get in? And how did you know that this is my resting room? Didn't anyone stop you?" This passageway was blocked by the security guards and was heavily guarded. How did he get in so quietly? "Stop me." Muyaja found her words very interesting. "Huanyu Tower is mine and it's huge. Who dares to stop me?" His words did make some sense. "Aren't you afraid of being photographed by the reporters?" Yin Shirshir said helplessly. "What a stiff tone. It sounds very uncomfortable." Muyaja smiled devilishly. He put out the cigarette and hooked his finger at her. "Shirshir, come here." Shirshir. This was the first time he had called her by her name. His tone was devilishly charming with a hint of gentleness. Yin Shirshir was caught off guard, and a part of her heart collapsed. "Come here." Seeing that she wasn't moving, a hint of displeasure appeared on his face. Yin Shirshir could faintly smell danger. She shook her head and took a few steps back. With her back against the door, she said gloomily, "I'm not going over." Muyaja curled his lips, his thick eyelashes hiding the mischievous smile in his eyes. "Why, she also has a little temper." "No, Mr. CEO. How would I dare to be angry with you?" Muyaja's lips curled into a smile. "Come here then." She turned her face away awkwardly and stood still. Muyaja found her awkward look very interesting. "You know what? The more you act like this, the harder it is for me to restrain myself." Yin Shirshir blushed. The ambiguous meaning in his words was obvious. She immediately frowned and said, "Are you a beast?" "I'm hungry." Muyaja's tongue curled into a frivolous smile. "A hungry man is very scary. Don't try to arouse my desire to conquer." Then he leaned forward calmly. "Good girl, come here." "Hey, do you want me to go over, or do you want to come over?" Leaning back in his chair, Muyaja lowered his gaze and answered, 3, 2, 1. Muyaja pretended to get up. Yin Shirshir couldn't help but shudder when she saw this. She quickly braced herself and walked over. The man was leaning on the sofa with one hand supporting his head, and a mischievous smile on his lips. Muyaji. Ah. Chapter 332. Before she could finish her sentence, Muyaja grabbed her wrist and pulled her into his embrace. His slender fingers lifted her chin. The man couldn't wait any longer as he lowered his eyes and kissed her lips. His body missed her a little. In the past few days in America, he had missed this woman all the time. He missed her shy and coquettish look. He missed the way she glared at him angrily. Even more, he missed the way she shyly waited under his body. Extremely charming. He missed her as if he had been poisoned by some kind of parasite. It was as if only she could cure the poison in his body. She was his poison, and also his antidote. The tip of his tongue hooked into her slightly opened lips and danced around her sweetness. The faint fragrance of smoke lingered between his lips and teeth. Yin Shishir's heartbeat suddenly sped up, and a flirtatious blush surfaced on her cheeks. At first, the kiss had a hint of attacking a city. He pressed on step by step, and she retreated step by step. However, gradually his kiss slowly became gentle. Muyaja supported his body with one hand, and the other domineeringly wrapped around her waist. He got up slightly and lazily leaned against the sofa. He hugged her to sit on his knees, and with one hand holding onto her thighs, his right hand tightly wrapped around the back of her neck. Using this position, he deepened the kiss. The tip of his tongue gently traced the shape of his lips. The kiss was soft, gentle, and soft, but it also seemed to have a faint trace of electricity. A trembling numbness instantly spread throughout her limbs and bones, and her body unconsciously began to heat up. The instinctive reaction hidden deep in her heart was easily dug out by him. Yin Shishir's breathing lost its stability and became slightly rough. Elan's kiss always had a terrifying magical power that could easily ignite the passion in the depths of her heart. Muyaja smiled mischievously. His left hand evilly lifted her lapel and casually untied her knot. His ice-cold fingertips seemed to brush across her collarbone and skin. Yin Shishir was shocked and reached out to hold his hand. "What are you doing?" "Eat you. I don't understand you." Yin Shishir blushed as if she didn't understand the hidden meaning in his words. Muyaja smiled and held her fingertips, guiding them to his chest. When her fingertips touched his buttons, Yin Shishir's face immediately turned red. He had become more sensitive after not touching her for a few days. It was just a deep kiss, but her face was completely red, all the way to her ears. "It was kind of cute," Muyaja said. "I didn't say that I was hungry. Woman, feed me. If you're hungry, let's go eat." Yin Shishir was both embarrassed and annoyed. "Woman, do you really not understand, or are you pretending not to understand?" Muyaja licked and kissed the corner of her lips. The tip of his nose pressed against hers as he said softly, "Eat you, don't you understand?" This time he understood. But Yin Shishir sucked in a deep breath of cold air. She swallowed hard and pressed her hands against his chest. No. Why can't I sleep with my woman? Why was this man so domineering? Yin Shishir was a little angry. She was extremely tired now and wanted to eat a full meal. Then, she wanted to take a short and comfortable nap to replenish her sleep. But heaven didn't fulfill her wish. Muyaja looked at her evasive gaze and felt a little unhappy. Thus, he pinched her chin and covered her mouth with his thin lips again. Chapter 333. Pressing against her soft lips, he said in a low voice, "I missed you." His tone was filled with rare tenderness. It was a poison that no woman could resist. It was as if it had seeped into her bones and numbed all her nerves. At that moment, Yin Shishir was powerless to resist. Hugging her waist, he turned her around and pressed her against the corner of the sofa as he slowly inched closer to her. She didn't even have the slightest leeway before her lips were softly sealed by his again. This time, the kiss wasn't as aggressive as before. His originally cold lips had some warmth under her tenderness. The deep kiss filled her mouth. He was no longer satisfied with just tasting her. He always craved more for her. She was like a mysterious treasure that tempted people to explore. The man's heavy body covered her body. She was so thin that she couldn't bear such strength. Her small hands pushed hard. Under the force, her lips and teeth tightened, blocking all his attacks outside the door. Muyaja reached out and pinched her chin. His fingertips pressed hard against her teeth. She felt the pain and couldn't help but open her mouth to compromise. A refreshing breath rushed in, covering her sweet lips and tongue, invading her. His attacks were gradual. Her beauty was hard to find words to describe in the world. Muyaja held the back of her neck. His slender fingers slowly entered her hair. He suddenly kissed her fiercely. In his passion, he couldn't wait to integrate her into his bones and blood. Knock, knock, knock. Someone suddenly knocked on the door. Yin Shirshir's eyes suddenly opened, and she woke up in an instant. Her fading rationality gradually came back. She turned her head in shock and heard a woman's voice outside the door. Shirshir, are you there? The person outside the door was actually a newcomer from the same batch as her, Jiang Yutong. She was 23 years old and came to Beijing alone when she was in her teens. After struggling for several years, she won the opportunity to sign a contract with Huanyu Pictures. She was a newcomer with good qualifications. If she could achieve good results in this training, she could sign a contract with Huanyu Pictures and officially debut. Without waiting for her response, the woman turned the doorknob, but found that it would not budge. Shirshir, I left my jacket in your lounge. Come in and get it. Are you there? Why is the door locked? The air was filled with a soft and charming aura that flowed ambiguously. He did not stop at all because of the commotion outside the door. She couldn't help but feel a little nervous. She pushed Muyaja, who was on top of her, but the man didn't react at all. He ignored the disturbance outside the door. She could not help but feel a little anxious at his indifference. Muyaja, stop. Muyaja smirked. What should I do? I can't stop. Yin Shirshir struggled to turn around, but was trapped in his arms domineeringly. Muyaja licked her earlobe and whispered, let her go. Yin Shirshir, are you there? The person outside the door was a little impatient. Muyaja's flirtatious gaze became more dangerous as his eyes slowly narrowed. Yin Shirshir was scared witless. She hurriedly said loudly, I'm not free now. Yin Shirshir regretted speaking just now. Her voice was misty and trembling, full of suppressed lust. How embarrassing. Shirshir, your voice sounds weird. Are you not feeling well? Chapter 334. Muyaja gave a strange smile as his slender index finger pinched her sensitive spot. She let out a soft moan and hurriedly covered her mouth with her hand as she glared fiercely at him. Did this guy want to see her embarrass herself? Shirshir? What's wrong with you? The person outside pushed the door. Yin Shirshir's nerves were on the verge of breaking. Even her breathing became a little hurried. Answer her. Muyaja smiled evilly and the tip of his tongue traced the kiss mark on her neck that hadn't faded yet. That was the seal he had left on her body. Yin Shirshir didn't know what to say and was furious. This man was obviously trying to embarrass her. Under his attack, half of her mind was in a rational state, and the other half was on the verge of collapse. I'm fine. Your coat, I'll send it to you later. There was suddenly no sound outside the door. The long silence made her extremely nervous. However, the man found her nervous look interesting, so he didn't stop attacking her, and kept messing around with her body. In the end, Yin Shirshir flew into a rage out of humiliation, and wanted to stop this tense invasion. Suddenly, she felt a sharp pain on her lips. Muyaja's handsome eyes suddenly opened, and a trace of scarlet flashed across his eyes. When he realized that she had bitten his lips, the anger in his eyes disappeared in a moment. In the pain, his lips quickly became numb, but he didn't retreat. Instead, he deepened the kiss with the beautiful sweet taste. The blood on his lips couldn't stop flowing. The tip of his tongue outlined, like a bloodthirsty vampire, evil and charming. He passed the sweet and fishy taste into her mouth. He wanted to let her have a taste of it. In the lounge, there was endless romance. Yin Shirshir's tongue touched a trace of sweetness, and a white light suddenly exploded in her mind. Muyaja continued kissing and plundering her passionately. However, the person under him gradually stopped responding. Muyaja slowly raised his head, only to see the person in his arms looking up at him with a pale face. Her eyes were fixed on his face. There were traces of blood on his lips. It was the blood from when she had bitten his lips. Coupled with her pale lips, it was strangely seductive. His eyes dimmed and he reached out to touch her lips, wiping away the blood on her lips. She opened her mouth and bit his finger. She left a row of deep teeth marks. Like an enraged cat, she bit fiercely without any mercy. Muyaja didn't move at all. He slowly got up and seemed to have lost interest. He casually took the suit jacket on the side, opened the door and walked out. Outside the door, Jiang Yutong did not leave. Instead, she waited for Yin Shishir at the door. Instead, she bumped into him unexpectedly. Jiang Yutong was stunned. With her status, she naturally didn't know who he was. Her first impression was that this man was too handsome. And he was unusually young. He was tall and had an extraordinary aura. His handsome face was like that of a god. It was difficult to measure his handsomeness with words. Who was he? Why did he walk out of Yin Shishir's lounge? Jiang Yutong's sharp eyes noticed that there was a wound on his lips, and blood was oozing out. Chapter 335. Muyaja frowned slightly. Seeing her gaze on his lips, he subconsciously licked the blood stain with his tongue. Without a word, he turned around and left. Arrogant, cold, and extraordinarily handsome. Judging from his attire, he must be a famous person who was either rich or respectable. Jiang Yutong could not believe it. She had thought that such a man would only appear in her imagination. She did not expect to see him with her own eyes. Hence, she stood there in a daze for a long time. She felt like she was in a dream. But why did he walk out of Yin Shishir's lounge? Could it be that there was some unknown relationship between them? Jiang Yutong started to make wild guesses. Although she appeared to be amiable and friendly toward Yin Shishir on the surface, everyone had their own selfish motives, didn't they? Although Yin Shishir had not officially debuted, she was already very famous. Not to mention the newcomers, even the celebrities had a lot of doubts and suspicions about her. There were rumors that Yin Shishir was able to appear in Lin Fengtian's film without debuting, because she had a sugar daddy behind her. Otherwise, how could a newbie with no fame like her appear in Lin Fengtian's film? That was not all. What right did she have to be invited to Huan Yu's annual cocktail party? Even Yang Mi and Tang Yu had to rely on their connections to get in. What right did she have? She was even Gu Xing's female companion? She heard that Gu Xingze had personally invited her. Was that possible? Gu Xingze was famous in the industry for being arrogant. Would he personally invite a newbie with no fame to be his female companion? Was it because of her looks? However, in the entertainment industry, there were many talented and beautiful women. There was no lack of different styles. Some were sexy and hot, some were outstanding beauties, and some were pure and innocent. The competition was cruel and the battles were fierce. That was not all. If she made use of this movie's female lead and the cocktail party to make a name for herself, wouldn't it be easy for her to sign a contract and debut? With such excellent resources, who would believe that she did not have a sugar daddy behind her? However, Yin Shishir was completely wronged on this point. Lin Fengtian had personally chosen her to be the female lead because Yin Shishir's temperament matched his image of the female lead. Even the picky Gu Xingze thought that she was the best choice for the female lead. Contrary to what they had guessed, the investors had already decided on the female lead. However, Lin Fengtian was adamantly against it. He would rather not film the film than let the investors force a candidate into the role. However, there was a saying that people's gossip was a fearful thing. As a result, these presumptuous remarks had already spread in private. Jiang Yutong was a little skeptical at first. But now she believed it all. She believed that Yin Shishir had a sugar daddy. Could it be that the man just now was her sugar daddy? Why? A series of questions flashed through Jiang Yutong's mind. Why did she drop out of school and come to the capital in her teens? As a young girl with an acting dream, she had spent a few years to get to where she was today, step by step, from being naive at the beginning to having the opportunity to sign a contract. Why was it that someone was able to beat her to it, and even effortlessly obtain a better result than her? On what basis? Therefore, she was more or less jealous of her. But this was human nature. Chapter 336. Hence, when Yin Shishir walked out of the restroom with her coat, the way Jiang Yutong looked at her was different from usual. Yin Shishir bumped into her when she walked out of the restroom. She was startled by her sudden appearance. Yutong. You. Shishir, why have you been in there for so long? What on earth are you doing? Why didn't you respond after knocking on the door for such a long time? Jiang Yutong came back to her senses and immediately cleaned up the messy emotions on her face. She walked in front of her with a smile and took the coat from her hand. I didn't do anything. She smiled, but she did not elaborate on the matter and simply brushed it off. She didn't know how long Jiang Yutong had been standing at the door, nor did she know how much she had heard of what had happened in the room. She only knew that she couldn't explain too much, otherwise it would only make things worse. But I think I saw a man walking out of your restroom just now. Your door was locked from the inside. Is there something going on between you two? Jiang Yutong pretended to be very nosy and wanted to know more about it. Yin Shishir was a little anxious. She hated Mu Yaja's casual behavior. It was as if he was the supreme ruler, as if all living beings were his playthings and should be ruled by him. He suddenly appeared in her resting room, and did not seem to be afraid of the media reporters who were lurking in Huanyu Tower to take photos. Saying strange things to her out of the blue that disturbed her mind, he suddenly wanted her. He wanted her all the time, regardless of the occasion. He didn't care about her feelings at all. Now someone saw it and wanted her to explain. But how could she explain it? Seeing that she was silent, Jiang Yutong became more curious. It seemed that she wouldn't give up until she gave her a reasonable explanation. She was definitely going to pester her. But the interesting thing was she really her friend? They had known each other for less than 10 days. They were in the same training class. They had seen each other face to face and exchanged smiles occasionally. Was it necessary for her to explain so much to her? Jiang Yutong saw that she didn't speak and concluded that there must be something going on between the two of them. Wasn't that inevitable? That man must be one of Yin Shishir's financial backers. After thinking about it, she felt that it was very suspicious. Huanyu Tower's security system was in place. How could a random person sneak into Huanyu Tower? It was a leisurely stroll, as if he was taking a stroll in his own backyard, careless and unconcerned. There must be something fishy going on. This man was either a rich and powerful celebrity, or he was one of Huanyu's higher-ups. There were too many unspoken rules in this industry. The scandal of Tang Yu's sleeping scandal had caused an uproar among the public. They were shocked by the dark rules of the entertainment industry. But in Jiang Yutong's eyes, it was not surprising at all. He had been in this circle for a few years, so what kind of dark side had he not seen? No matter how talented or beautiful a newcomer was, it was impossible for her to become famous for no reason. This industry was all about background and resources. No matter how good her aptitude was, if she didn't have anyone to support her from behind, even if she wanted to become famous, it was just that she had nowhere to go. Chapter 337. There must be someone behind the scenes who pushed her to the top. If she wanted to figure it out, she had to build a good relationship with Yin Shishir first. Then she could get the man's identity and the ins and outs of the matter from her. How powerful was the person who could make a newcomer popular in such a short time? If it was possible, she might even be able to poach a man from Yin Shishir and get some resources from him. As for the hidden rules, if she could become popular overnight, she would be willing to do anything. After staying in this circle for a long time, her values were naturally not right. She could not be indifferent to the so-called innocents. After all, she was not young anymore. If she could not make a name for herself, she would never have another chance. Therefore, since she could not force her, she could only play the tender card. With a friendly smile on her face, she lowered her voice and asked, Shishir, the man just now, is he your boyfriend? That's not it. She vehemently denied, feeling baffled by his words. Wasn't Jiang Yutong being overly enthusiastic about her matters? What was the relationship between her and Muyaja? Was it her turn to ask? Thinking of this, Yin Shishir turned and walked to the training room. When Jiang Yutong saw this, she unwillingly followed behind her and said carefully, Shishir, maybe you think that I'm the kind of person who can't keep secrets, but I've always treated you as a good friend. Among all the newcomers, you take care of me the best. We are friends, right? Yin Shishir slowed down her pace. Friends, except for Xiao Shui. She really had no friends. When she was in school, she was a little autistic. In school, girls always liked to gather in small groups. If she could not fit in the group, she would be isolated. What's more, when she was in school, her appearance gradually grew. She was fresh, pure and beautiful. Not only in class, but also many seniors admired her very much. Among them, some of these seniors were the most handsome men in school. They were the Prince Charming in many girls' eyes. Therefore, the hatred was more obvious. Many boys were constantly pursuing her. Every morning when they went to class, their desks would be stuffed with a stack of envelopes. Some of these envelopes contained love letters that were full of sweet nothings, while others contained razor blades and threatening letters sent by some girls. Every time, she threw them away cleanly and didn't open a single one of them. She did not have the throbbing of a girl's youth at all. What she wanted was to get into a good university, then leave the family and be independent outside. Her behavior of throwing away the love letters, in the eyes of outsiders, was arrogant. Most of the boys in school were hot-blooded and cared about their faces. Many boys saw that the girl they passionately pursued threw away the love letters one drawer after drawer, and their admiration turned into anger out of shame. Therefore, not only did the girls give her the cold shoulder, but the boys also ostracized her, isolated her, teased her, and even went overboard. Nobody was willing to be friends with her. It seemed that she did not need a friend. Although she was alone, there was no betrayal, no framing, no trouble, which was very good. But there were many people who pointed at her back and called her a vixen. Li Qin also scolded her. Yun Na also scolded her, and her classmates also scolded her behind her back. She was very confused for a while. She did not know what she did wrong. Chapter 338. She wasn't stupid. She knew exactly what Jiang Yutong was thinking. Jiang Yutong was trying to get information out of her. She wasn't stupid. Why would she tell her? She might look weak, but she wasn't. She stood aloof from worldly affairs. She didn't like to play games, nor did she like to cater to others. If she could get along with someone, she would. If she couldn't, she would never open her heart to them. Sure. Why aren't you saying anything? Are you worried that I'll spill the beans? Jiang Yutong patted her chest when she didn't respond. Hey, don't worry. I won't betray you. With that, Jiang Yutong stood in front of her and made a solemn vow. I swear that if I can't keep your secret, I'll be struck by lightning. It was a vow. She wasn't worried about retribution at all. Yin Shishir looked at her deeply. She suddenly felt a little tired. Why should I tell you about my relationship with him? Yin Shishir was confused. Will it help you in any way? Jiang Yutong paused for a moment and quickly explained. No, I didn't. I'm just worried about you. What are you worried about? Yin Shishir was even more curious. Jiang Yutong touched the back of her head and pretended to be worried. Shishir, you've signed a contract with Huan Yu, right? Yes. She had signed a contract. But then? Have you read the terms and conditions of the contract? She replied. Yes, I saw it clearly. Then you should know that it's a breach of contract if you're dating in private. Jiang Yutong said to her in a serious tone. She seemed to be concerned, but in fact, she was trying to scare her. Yin Shishir pretended to be deep in thought. In fact, she was secretly guessing what Jiang Yutong was planning. I heard that it's a serious breach of contract. Not only will you be banned by Huan Yu, but you'll also face an astronomical sum of money. You won't be able to pay it back even if you spend your whole life. Jiang Yutong said kindly. Yin Shishir said calmly. It's okay. He's not my boyfriend. Even if it was, so what? The entire Huan Yu belonged to Muyaja. However, when Yin Shishir thought about how Muyaja had asked her for a sky-high penalty for breaching the contract, she shuddered. This man seemed to be capable of doing such a thing. If she made him unhappy, he didn't even need to do it himself. He could easily crush her with a single finger. Seeing her suddenly fall silent, he coldly denied it. His tone was decisive and straightforward, without even a trace of hesitation. His face was calm and composed, without any unnaturalness or guilt. It didn't look like he was lying at all. Is he really not her boyfriend? Jiang Yutong thought to herself, that's right. If such a handsome man is my sugar daddy, he's so handsome, rich, and elegant. He's like a model from an idol drama. Many people will be jealous of me if I tell them. Jiang Yutong rolled her eyes. Suddenly, she lowered her voice and whispered carefully in her ear. Sure, that man can't be the mysterious sugar daddy behind you, right? As soon as she finished speaking, Yin Shishir raised her head abruptly. Her pair of clear eyes stared fixedly at her as her brows furrowed slightly. She seemed to have seen through Jiang Yutong's intentions. Chapter 339. Jiang Yutong's heart skipped a beat when she saw her reaction. She covered her mouth in shock. She was right. She murmured in disbelief. It can't be true, right? As she spoke, she tugged at Yin Shishir's sleeve, her eyes burning with excitement. Shishir, I heard from them that the reason why you can get so many resources before your debut is because you have a big sugar daddy supporting you. Are those rumors true? No, Yin Shishir said coldly. Oh, then what's your relationship with me? I asked you a question but you didn't answer me. Do you even consider me as your friend? Jiang Yutong frowned and scolded her impatiently when she saw that she had sealed her mouth so tightly. Yin Shishir's lips curled up coldly as she retorted, ridiculous. When did we become friends? Why don't I know about it? Jiang Yutong was stunned by her cold question. What? She seemed to be a little lonely because of Yin Shishir's indifference. She lowered her eyes and sighed absent-mindedly. I thought we were friends, she murmured, looking aggrieved and sad. She said bitterly, You're so nice to me. I thought you should treat me as a friend. Yin Shishir was so angry that she laughed. You thought? Your so-called thought is just your wishful thinking. Jiang Yutong was irritated by her straightforward words. Yin Shishir, what do you mean? You make it sound like I'm coveting something from you. Why do you have to be so sarcastic? You've really hurt my heart. Yin Shishir's face curled into a sneer as her lips curled into a mocking smile. Jiang Yutong, what answer do you want from me? Jiang Yutong stared at her blankly. She couldn't help but feel that Yin Shishir was so aggressive. What? I'm asking you now. Why are you silent again? Yin Shishir's lips curled into a smile. Let me ask for you then. You want to ask me, I'm just a newcomer. How can I be in Director Lin's film? Jiang Yutong's eyes changed. She nodded silently. Suddenly, she realized something and shook her head. That's not what I meant. Yin Shishir smirked and took a step closer to her. Then what do you mean? On what basis can I attend Huan Yu's annual cocktail party? What right do I have to be Heavenly King Gu's female companion? What right do I have to sign a contract with Huan Yu when I just debuted? Is it related to the man you saw just now? Isn't that what you want to ask? Yin Shishir was 1.7 meters tall, while Jiang Yutong was only 1.6 meters tall. The difference in height between them was destined to make Yin Shishir look down on her. Jiang Yutong stared at her dumbfounded. She clenched her fists tightly and wanted to say something, but she stopped herself. That was what she wanted to ask, but she had asked it so vaguely. She thought that Yin Shishir, who looked dull on the surface, would not be shrewd. She did not expect her to see through her thoughts at a glance. Chapter 340. Behind her, Jiang Yutong froze on the spot with a pale face. Her eyes were filled with hatred. She was also embarrassed. Women were creatures that held grudges. Jiang Yutong swore to herself that she would return the humiliation she suffered in front of Yin Shishir today 100-fold. However, she was a woman of her word. Therefore, when Yin Shishir stepped into the classroom the next day, she was acutely aware of the crowd's judging, speculating, and questioning gazes landing on her. They were as sharp as arrows, making her feel uncomfortable, as if she was being pricked by needles. She raised her head and vaguely saw Jiang Yutong looking at her with a deep expression. She was sitting in the corner, staring at her with a gloomy expression, as if she was very appreciative of her current awkward situation. The murmurs made Yin Shishir feel as if she had returned to her days as a student. The moment she stepped into the classroom, she was greeted with the same piercing gazes and scrutiny. From head to toe, from the outside to the inside, it was as if they wanted to dig out every corner of her body. Humans were selfish by nature. When they met something better than themselves, they would be envious, jealous, and even want to destroy it. Jiang Yutong was such a woman. Yin Shishir, on the other hand, preferred peace. She was not overly greedy or ambitious. Most of the time, she just wanted to enjoy the world in peace. She wanted to live and survive peacefully. This kind of peace had accompanied her for almost her entire life. No matter what kind of slander or predicament she faced, she could suppress herself and get through it calmly. This kind of peace might seem lonely, or even cold in the eyes of outsiders. However, it was as if her life was destined to be full of misfortune. It was destined to not be peaceful. Yin Shirshir pretended to be calm. She hugged her textbook and sat down in her seat. But her carefree attitude caused even more whispered discussions to arise. Buzzing, buzzing, buzzing. It was as if innumerable flies were surrounding her and circling around her, disturbing her to the point that her mind was in turmoil. She looked up slightly and glanced at the indifferent faces following the murmurs. Seeing this, those people quickly lowered their heads and pursed their lips. They felt guilty and did not say a word. However, when Yin Shirshir lowered her head, the murmurs started again, making her feel extremely anxious. This was terrible. There was no need to think about it. Who was the culprit behind this sudden disturbance? Jiang Yutong must have spread some kind of rumor in the classroom to attract those suspicious gazes. The faces of those who were whispering to each other in private gradually became distorted and hideous in her eyes. They were incomparably hideous and ugly. She could no longer pretend to be calm. She pushed the table angrily and stood up, shouting, "Are you done?" Everyone was stunned. No one expected Yin Shirshir, who was usually quiet and even timid, to the point that she was actually angry. For a moment, it was as if the air had frozen. Until Jiang Yutong sneered. "No one is talking about you. What are you thinking? You're deaf, but I'm not." Yin Shirshir retorted with a sneer. Jiang Yutong choked for a moment and was speechless. People who looked easy to bully were not easy to bully. Chapter 341. Suddenly, a voice came from the classroom. "You're the only one who's allowed to do it, but we're not allowed to talk about it." "Who's talking?" Yin Shirshir's cold gaze swept over. "If you're talking to me, please stand up first and let me see who you are. This is the basic courtesy between people. Who's afraid of you? Do you think you're so great just because you have a sugar daddy to rely on?" In the second row, a pretty girl with a ponytail stood up unhappily. "We're talking about you, so what?" Yin Shirshir's eyes narrowed as her lips curled into a cold smirk. Everyone present shuddered inexplicably at this sight. "What are you talking about?" Her voice was very soft and light, but it revealed a sense of coldness. This coldness was not indifferent on the surface, but it was bone-chilling. That ponytailed girl was also a little frightened by her tone, and shrunk her shoulders slightly. But when she thought of the dozens of people in the training class who were on the same side as her, she regained some courage and said, "We're talking about how unclean you are and how you use dirty and despicable methods." Yin Shirshir's expression did not change. For example? Do you still need to ask me about what you've done?" That girl sneered and said, "Yesterday someone saw a man walking out of your lounge. You're the only one using that lounge, and I don't know who gave you the privilege. That man must be your sugar daddy behind the scenes. I say, although you're a newbie, you have so many resources. You obviously relied on the unspoken rules to get to your position." Her words were laced with sticks and spears, aggressive. Yin Shirshir said indifferently, "A woman's jealousy is really scary." "What did you say?" "I'm jealous of you." That girl slammed the table in exasperation and said angrily, "Let me tell you, I've reached this step by relying on myself. Unlike some people who don't walk on the bright path and choose to follow the dirty unspoken rules. Yin Shirshir, don't let me get hold of any evidence, or I'll expose you." In a moment of impulse, she said these words. After saying it, that girl suddenly regretted it. Looking at Yin Shirshir's cold and disdainful eyes again, it was as if she was mocking her ignorance and childishness. "Do you think everyone is the same as you? What do you mean? Are you as pretty as me? Do you have my acting skills? Do you have my aptitude? Only those who aren't capable need to rely on the unspoken rules. But I don't need to." Suddenly, a few mocking laughter could be heard in the classroom. The girl was so embarrassed that her face flushed red. She pushed her desk away and quickly walked up to Yin Shirshir. Pointing at her, she said, "Teach, what's the point of only knowing how to sow discord here? Are you saying that I'm not as pretty as you? Do you with your acting skills? Do I have your aptitude? Where do you?" "I'm Tashi," she said coldly. However, there was no rebuttal in the classroom. Yin Shirshir in terms of aptitude, no one in the class could compare to Yin Shirshir. There was no room for rebuttal. Bitch! That girl flew into a rage out of humiliation and rushed towards Yin Shirshir's face with threatening gestures. Chapter 342. Yin Shirshir reached out and gently wiped the mark on her neck. With a sharp glint in her eyes, she casually picked up a heavy pencil case from the side and smashed it at her face. The pencil case was made of iron. When it hit the girl's forehead, it broke a layer of skin and blood oozed out. No one in the training class expected the situation to go out of control. They were all stunned. The ponytailed girl clutched her forehead in pain and retreated a few steps in a sorry state. Looking at the bloodstain on her hand, her face flushed red in an instant. Feeling wronged and unbearable, her eyes reddened. Losing her rationality, she picked up a stool from the side and hurled it at Yin Shirshir. There were a few exclamations and attempts to dissuade her. However, her movements were too fast. There was no time to stop her. In the blink of an eye, the stool hit Yin Shirshir. Yin Shirshir couldn't dodge in time and was hit by the stool. She staggered and fell to the ground. At the same time, a thunderous roar came from the door. "What are you doing?" Everyone looked over and saw the deputy artistic director, Zheng Yun, standing at the door angrily. His eyes were fixed on the stool in the ponytailed girl's hand. The veins on his forehead were bulging. What surprised everyone even more was that Huanyu Entertainment's top manager, Qin Zhou, was standing behind him. Beside him was the famous Heavenly King Gu Xingze. The newcomer training class would usually invite famous artists to teach the newcomers. In the past, Gu Xingze never participated in the newcomer training class. Even when Ji Yanluo personally invited him, Gu Xingze dismissed him with a look of disinterest. This time, he didn't know what possessed him, but he actually said that he wanted to come with Qin Zhou to the newcomer training class. Qin Zhou was one of the instructors of the newcomer training class. He cursed in his heart. This guy just came back from Milan Fashion Week. When he got off the plane, he found out that Yin Shirshir was in the newcomer training class. He took the initiative to come and listen to how he teaches the newcomers. Listen to his lecture? Who are you kidding? He's obviously worried about a certain woman. However, before they could enter the classroom, they heard the commotion from afar and hurried over. Obviously, they had clearly seen the scene in the classroom just now. The ponytailed girl didn't expect them to suddenly appear. She only cursed in her heart. She was so impulsive that she forgot where she was. She hurriedly put down the weapon in her hand and stood there helplessly. Her face was in a daze, and she didn't dare to believe what she had done when she lost her mind. "What are you doing?" Zheng Yun stepped forward, and just as he was about to lash out, a light breeze blew past him. When everyone came back to their senses, they saw that Gu Xingze had actually walked to Yin Shirshir's side with a nervous expression. He bent down slightly and crouched down, holding up her wrist with some heartache. Earlier, when that young lady had swung the stool towards her, she had instinctively stretched out her arm to block it. On her pure white arm, a thick bruise had instantly appeared. In Gu Xingze's eyes, he couldn't hide the pain in his heart. He carefully touched the wound, causing Yin Shirshir to frown. "Does it hurt?" he asked nervously. Yin Shirshir shook her head and gritted her teeth. "It doesn't hurt." "You're still saying it doesn't hurt?" Gu Xingze knew her well. No matter how painful it was, she would try her best to endure it. Seeing the cold sweat on her forehead oozing uncontrollably, Gu Xingze suddenly raised his head. A dangerous glint flashed across his cold eyes. "Who hurt you?" There was a strange silence in the classroom. The dead silence was suffocating. Chapter 343. Who hurt her? He was at the back of the group, so he did not see what happened just now. When he stood at the door, Yin Shirshir had already fallen to the ground. Beside her, a ponytailed girl was holding a stool in her hand, standing there in a daze. There was a strange silence in the classroom. Everyone was frozen in place, and no one dared to make a sound. This was the first time they saw Gu Xingze's real face. In the past, they mostly saw the image of the Heavenly King on the television screen. Sometimes he was arrogant, sometimes he was cold, and sometimes he was gentle. This was everyone's first time seeing Gu Xingze's real face. Compared to his image on the screen, he was more noble and handsome, as if he was born naturally. However, at this moment, his body exuded a bone-chilling coldness. His eyes were cold and terrifying. It was as if he could kill someone with a single glance. No one dared to move, or even make a sound. Even the sound of their breathing was carried out quietly, for fear of angering the man in front of them. Who hurt her? Gu Xingze questioned her coldly again. His powerful voice reverberated in the huge classroom, numbing everyone's nerves. Someone pointed weakly at the ponytailed girl standing by the podium and whispered, It's Lu Yi. Whoosh! Everyone's gaze immediately fell on Lu Yi's body. Lu Yi was so shocked that she took a step back. Her back was against the blackboard, and she could not avoid it for a moment. Her shoulders trembled, and she finally mustered up the courage to argue. It's not me, it's Yun Shirshir. She was the one who attacked me first. As she spoke, as if she was grasping at a thin life-saving straw, she kept showing Gu Xingze the wound on her forehead that was still bleeding. She said pitifully, Look, she hit me and left this. She hit me first, so I hit her back. I was just defending myself. No one spoke, and no one testified. At this moment, everyone remained silent, and no one dared to speak. In fact, no one saw that it was Yun Shirshir who made the first move. Instead, it was Lu Yi who made the first move and hurt Yun Shirshir. Then Yun Shirshir fought back. Every training room was equipped with surveillance cameras. Once they checked the records, the truth would be revealed. Therefore, no one dared to get involved in this mess. Jiang Yutong was also stunned, completely dumbfounded. Like many young girls, she had a Prince Charming in her heart. Gu Xingze had been in the entertainment industry for many years. With his handsome appearance and solid acting skills, he had captured a considerable number of fans, and Jiang Yutong was one of them. She deeply admired Gu Xingze. He was the only national idol in her heart. Although there were many new stars in the entertainment industry, no one could replace Gu Xingze's position. However, at this moment, she saw the man of her dreams hugging Yun Shirshir's shoulders lovingly. His eyes were filled with tenderness as he inquired about her well-being. The doting look in his eyes could hardly be concealed as it overflowed like a river. She stared at him dumbfounded. Her heart was filled with mixed feelings. Bitterness, jealousy, and most of all, jealousy. Jealousy. How could she not be jealous? If Gu Xingze could speak to her gently, she would be so happy that she would go crazy. But the idol in her heart was holding another woman. And this woman was the one she hated the most. Why? Chapter 344. Why was it Yun Shirshir? She wished that the person lying in his arms right now was her, not Yun Shirshir, who had used underhanded means to climb up the social ladder. Gu Xingze raised his head coldly and glared at Lu Yi expressionlessly. He suddenly said coldly, Huanyu Entertainment will not sign a contract with a trainee who causes trouble. Everyone was in an uproar as soon as he finished speaking. Gu Xingze's short sentence completely cut off Lu Yi's path to stardom. Gu Xingze was one of the major shareholders of Huanyu Entertainment. He held 1/5 of Huanyu's shares, so his orders were naturally powerful. It was not inferior to a ban order. This huge Huanyu corporation could be considered half of his world. If he wanted to expel a trainee, it was just a matter of moving his mouth. It was not difficult. However, Lu Yi had spent a lot of effort to get into Huanyu's training class. This opportunity was very precious. If she missed it, there would not be a second time. If she could successfully graduate from the training class, she would be able to debut. Debut, how many people dreamed of it? But he had removed her from the class with a simple sentence. This meant that she would be permanently frozen in Huanyu. That was too cruel. Yun Shirshir's eyes flashed slightly. Her gaze fell on the helpless Lu Yi, but she did not say anything. Lu Yi opened her mouth in shock. Her eyes were filled with fear and shock. What? What do you mean? Please get out. You have lost the right to sign a contract and debut. Gu Xingze's thin lips parted slightly. His tone was frosty. Everyone was stunned, including Jiang Yutong. She was Gu Xingze's hardcore fan, so she knew that as a shareholder of Huanyu, he had a lot of power in his hands. But she did not expect that he would ban someone for Yun Shirshir. The training class was silent for a long time. Gu Xingze didn't say anything else. He bent down and carefully pulled Yun Shirshir into his arms, lifting her up easily. His every movement was so careful, as if he was afraid of hurting her, as if he was treating an extremely fragile treasure. Lu Yi said unwillingly, Heavenly King Gu, I'm your fan. In my heart, only a noble and elegant woman is worthy of your status. This woman is not worthy of you. Gu Xingze ignored her indifferently and was about to leave the classroom with Yin Shishir in his arms. Lu Yi rushed forward and grabbed his arm. Don't you know? She relied on the unspoken rules to get to her position. Let go, he warned in a cold voice. His cold gaze was like a sharp sword, shooting at the back of her hand. Lu Yi was frightened by his gaze and took a step back. However, she finally gathered her courage and cried, Since you want to fire me, then please give me a satisfactory explanation. Yin Shishir is also a student of the training class. She has already signed a contract with Huan Yu. I remember that the contract states very clearly. During the contract, she can't be in a relationship. Otherwise, it's a breach of contract. Yesterday, someone saw a man entering and leaving her lounge. She obviously relied on dirty means to get to her position. Why does she have special treatment? Shut up. Lu Yi did not care about his warning. If she lost the right to sign a contract, Yin Shishir would not have an easy time either. Chapter 345. This has nothing to do with you. Gu Xingze could not be bothered to listen to her explanation, and left with Yin Shishir in his arms. Qin Zhou's expression changed slightly when he saw Gu Xingze leave. He instructed Zheng Yin to tidy up the situation and left in a hurry. Gu Xingze brought Yin Shishir to his studio on the 30th floor of Huanyu Tower. Gu Xingze's studio occupied a total of 500 square meters of floor space. The entire floor was his world. When the elevator door opened, a simple yet luxurious living room came into view. The private doctor was already waiting in the living room. Qin Zhou had hurriedly contacted the private doctor in Huanyu Tower just now. Gu Xingze placed Yin Shishir on the single bed behind the screen and turned around. Come and take a look at her. The doctor observed Gu Xingze's expression and saw how nervous he was. He knew how important this woman was to him, so he did not dare to neglect her. Yin Shishir allowed the private doctor to examine her and concluded that it was just a light bruise. After some simple treatment, she would recover in a few days. Gu Xingze's stiff and cold expression finally relaxed. Thank you, Gu Xingze. Yin Shishir said gratefully from the bottom of her heart. She did not mention a word about what happened in the classroom just now. Qin Zhou saw that Yin Shishir was fine. He was a discerning person, so he quickly left with the doctor. Bang! The elevator door closed, and the living room fell silent. Gu Xingze slowly sat on the side of the bed and looked up at her. He asked softly, Does it hurt? His expression was careful, as if she was a precious and fragile object in his eyes. If he did not take good care of her, she would break easily. Yin Shishir shook her head. It doesn't hurt anymore. You're putting on a brave front. Gu Xingze lowered his eyes and looked a little helpless. I used my hand to block it. I'm not injured anywhere else. It's just a light bruise on my arm. It will be fine after some time, said Yin Shishir. After she finished speaking, there was a long silence. It was so quiet that it felt a little awkward. Both of them had their own thoughts and did not speak to each other. Just as he was about to speak, Qin Zhou suddenly called. He immediately looked a little impatient. He picked up the phone and said coldly, You better have something urgent. Qin Zhou's lips twitched. It's like this. Jilin wants to meet you for dinner. Bring Yin Shishir. I'm not going. Her arm was injured. How could she go? It's about the movie. Let's meet another day. I can't. The producers and investors are all there. Your brother is there too. Gu, could it be because of Yang Shouqing? Gu Xingze was slightly stunned. He was absent-minded for a moment. Then he hung up the phone and stood up. You rest here first. Yin Shishir quickly stood up as well. It's okay. I can go with you. Her hearing was very good. Gu Xingze did not avoid her when he answered the phone. She could vaguely hear that Qin Zhou wanted her to go too. Gu Xingze looked at her helplessly. His eyes were filled with tenderness and heartache. Be a good girl. Although it was a short word, his face was overflowing with love and affection. It made it impossible for her to resist. Gu Jinglian was an extremely dangerous person. He did not want Yin Shishir to appear in an event where he was present. Yin Shishir compromised. Okay. Gu Xingze was relieved. However, just as he was about to turn and leave, Yin Shirshir quickly followed him and gently tugged at the corner of his shirt. I'd better go with you. What if it's something important? Gu Xingze pondered for a moment and finally nodded. Okay, then you listen to my arrangements. Chapter 346. At night, the wind was bone-chilling. The location of the appointment was Palace Private Clubhouse. Palace Private Clubhouse was located in the bustling Longchuan Manor. The scenery was unique, and it was far away from the hustle and bustle of the city. It was a rare and peaceful place. 100 years ago, this place was densely packed with aristocratic mansions. The Gu family, which had 100 years of history, was also from an aristocratic family. With the passing of time, this piece of land had become the most desired and unattainable place for the common people in the capital. However, on this piece of land where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold, the Gu family's old mansion occupied a considerable amount of land. The Gu family was the #1 aristocratic family in the underworld, and was ranked first among the 3 major families in the capital. Even now, after 100 years of prosperity and decline, the Gu family was still a powerful family in the underworld. The Gu clan was in existence that controlled half of the entire underworld. The other clans were wary of them, and they had once enjoyed a period of glory. 15 years ago, there was an internal strife within the Gu family. In order to fight for the position of the head of the family, the direct descendants and the collateral descendants fought until their heads were broken and blood was spilled. Because of this, the Gu family declined for a period of time. Because of this, the Gu family had once fallen apart in 10 years. The bloodline of the Gu family was extremely weak. In the early years, the Gu family's position was unstable and the 2 children of the head of the Gu family, Gu Lianqing, were assassinated. Later on he had a son. Other than Gu Jinglian, the eldest son, Gu Lianqing also had a concubine son, Gu Xingze. A concubine son? The so-called concubine's son was Gu Lianqing's illegitimate son. Gu Jinglian was the son of Gu Lianqing's first wife, and was the rightful successor. However, Gu Jinglian's personality had always been arrogant. He was young and arrogant, and was a typical hedonistic second generation. Although Gu Xingze was younger than Gu Jinglian by 5 years, he was deeply loved by Gu Lianqing. However, in the 100 years of the Gu family's history, there had never been a concubine's son who became the head of the family. Even if Gu Lianqing wanted to help him become the head of the family, the elders of the Gu family would probably oppose it. To the century-old underworld families, the distinction between direct descendants and concubines was very particular. The son of a concubine was a son of a concubine. He could not see the light of day. In the car, Gu Xingze stared coldly at the passing scenery outside the window. His identity had always been a shady one. He had never even stepped into the Gu family with a proper identity. When Gu Lianqing passed away more than a decade ago, Gu Xingze was only 10 years old. Gu Jinglian called him to his side and gave him a bank card and a plane ticket to a foreign country. This was the first time the 2 brothers had met, but it was also a farewell. At that time, Gu Jinglian had already successfully inherited the position of the head of the Gu family. Naturally, he could not tolerate any provocation. Gu Jinglian stood in the study and spoke to him briefly and straightforwardly. You don't have to work so hard in school. You don't have to work too hard to further your studies abroad. As the bastard son of the Gu family, you don't need to pursue any dreams at all. You only need to know how to squander and enjoy life. After all, I will give you an inexhaustible wealth in this lifetime. Gu Jinglian's evil face was full of mockery. I should have gotten rid of you. But my father left a will before he died. For his sake, sending you abroad is my last mercy. However, you have to remember that the position of the head of the Gu family belongs to me in the end. His words were cold and explicit. If it were not for Gu Lianqing's will before he died, Gu Jinglian would not have tolerated his existence. Going abroad was just another way for him to live. It was not until 10 years ago that he was pardoned and regained the right to set foot on this land. Chapter 347. The car slowly stopped at the private clubhouse. After settling Yin Shirshir in the hall, Gu Xingze hurried to the VIP room. Yin Shirshir planned to wait for him in the hall. She waited for a long time. Not long after, Lilan walked in with a briefcase. As soon as she walked into the hall, She caught a glimpse of a beautiful figure sitting alone in the corner. She couldn't help but take a second look. She was surprised to find that it was Yin Shirshir, so she walked over with a smile. Yin Shirshir was sitting quietly on the sofa, reading a magazine in her hand. From afar, her slender figure looked so thin, but under the light, there was an indescribable tranquility and beauty. Lilan was a little surprised to see her here. She sighed inwardly again and walked to the sofa. Lilan sat down beside her and gently nudged her. Perhaps the movement was too abrupt, but she, who was immersed in her book, was a little startled. Her shoulders couldn't help but tremble, and she came back to her senses. She looked up and saw that it was Lilan. Her eyes couldn't help but be a little confused. Lilan smiled and asked, "Why are you here?" Yin Shirshir looked at her in confusion and didn't react. "Why are you here?" "I just finished work and came over for dinner. What about you?" Yin Shirshir was stunned. She was a little absent-minded for a moment. She turned to look out of the window and realized that it was already dark. She also realized that her empty stomach was a little hungry. She realized that she hadn't eaten for the whole day. Thinking of this, her stomach let out a painful groan. Yin Shirshir felt embarrassed. Lilan heard it and smiled. "Are you hungry? Let's have dinner together." She nodded slowly. Suddenly, she thought of something. "Where's Muyaja? Is he busy?" "Probably. The CEO's schedule is always unpredictable." "I'm not sure." Lilan paused and said, "Why are you looking for him?" Yin Shirshir suddenly remembered that Muyaja left without saying goodbye yesterday. She was a little angry, so she shook her head calmly. Suddenly, she forced a smile and said, "I'm hungry. I want to eat something." It seemed that she was so hungry that her stomach growled as soon as she finished speaking. She hurriedly covered her stomach, feeling a little embarrassed. Lilan, who was sharp enough to notice this, laughed. "Looks like you're really starving." Yin Shirshir's cheeks were a little red. She couldn't help but feel aggrieved. Why was Gu Xingze was gone for so long? She hadn't eaten for a day. Lilan smiled and asked, "Then what do you want to eat? I'll take you to eat." As she said that, she didn't forget to add, "Don't worry, whatever you want to eat, we have it all. And I'll definitely satisfy you." The CEO had repeatedly ordered her to do whatever she wanted, no matter how big or small. Naturally, Muyaja had specially instructed her to do so. Yin Shirshir suddenly remembered that she had been thinking about Chinese food. Usually, she was so busy that Yu was in charge of all 3 meals a day. Now that he wasn't at home, she actually missed his cooking. Hence, she missed it very much. Thinking of this, she moved her lips and said greedily, "I want to eat Chinese food." Lilan smiled. Of course, she could satisfy such a small request. Chapter 348. Yin Shirshir sent a text message to Gu Xingze and left with Lilan. The palace was a high-end place for dining, leisure, and entertainment. It had a KTV, a bar, a gym, and a cafe. Whether it was working or holding a meeting, all kinds of food, drink, and entertainment could be done here. The Chinese restaurant at the palace was very famous. The decoration was elegant, and the signboard was naturally linked to the restaurant's reputation. On average, even if there were only 2 or 3 dishes, it would cost a few hundred to 1,000 yuan. Even so, it was still very popular. Therefore, if one did not make a reservation, it would be very difficult to get a seat. Moreover, it was the peak period for dining, and the flow of customers was fierce. However, for Lilan, making a reservation was a matter of course. After making an appointment, the store manager specially arranged a small private room with an elegant environment for them. The elegant lighting, glass windows, and bead curtains gave the room a very classical charm. Yin Shirshir did not have a big appetite, but now she was extremely hungry. Looking at the delicious dishes on the menu, she felt even more hungry just by looking at the tempting appearance. The hungrier she was, the more reckless she was. She wanted to eat everything she saw. In the end, she unknowingly ordered a table full of dishes. Looking at the delicious dishes presented one after another, Yin Shirshir pinched her chopsticks and felt a little guilty. Earlier, she glanced at the prices. Just one dish was around a few hundred yuan. With so many dishes, it would be impossible to fill the table without a few thousand yuan. Lilan was also a little surprised. She looked at the table full of dishes in a daze. Her hand holding the chopsticks was a little stiff. She laughed and asked, "Are you really that hungry?" Yin Shirshir was also a little distressed. Lilan had eaten some snacks before work, so she did not feel very hungry. Moreover, she did not have a greedy appetite. After a few bites, she felt full and began to put food on Lilan's plate. Yin Shirshir ate with relish. This Chinese restaurant was indeed worthy of being its #1 signature. The exquisite dishes were indeed delicious, making one greedy for more. Moreover, she was indeed hungry. Now that she was in front of Lilan, she did not care about her reserved image. She was very focused on eating. Before she knew it, more than half of the food on the table was gone. Lilan just looked at her like this. Just looking at her like this was pleasing to the eye. This was probably what they meant by a feast for the eyes. No matter what a beautiful person did, it was a kind of pleasure to watch them. Before the soup was served, she raised her head and put down her chopsticks. The tip of her pink tongue gently curled the corners of her lips, as if she had not had enough, but also seemed to be satisfied. There was a kind of cute naivety in her eyes. Lilan couldn't help but smile. She handed over the handkerchief and asked softly, "Are you full?" Yin Shirshir nodded and took the handkerchief from her. She carefully wiped her mouth and subconsciously touched her slightly bulging belly. It was no wonder that the cost of food here was so high. The food was indeed delicious. If her appetite was big enough, she was confident that she could finish a whole table. She greedily glanced at the silverfish soup that the waiter had served again. She was a little reluctant to part with it, but she really couldn't eat anymore. She helplessly sighed, raised her head, and asked softly, "Can I take all of this away?" "Of course, as long as you want," Lilan said again. "If you like the taste of this restaurant, I'll bring you here next time." Chapter 349. Only then did Yin Shirshir reveal a satisfied smile. "It's getting late. Shirshir, let's go back." Yin Shirshir didn't show any disgust when Lilan addressed her intimately. In her heart, she already had a good impression of Lilan. Hence, she didn't reject Lilan's affectionate nickname for her. She nodded, stood up, and followed Lilan out. Just as they walked out of the private room, they bumped into a well-dressed middle-aged man in the corridor. Lilan's eyes were sharp. She recognized him at a glance. Out of courtesy, she quickly greeted him with a smile. Isn't this Mr. Qian? What a coincidence to meet you here." This middle-aged man was none other than Qian Xiaohua, the investor who was working with Huanyu Entertainment this time. It was also him who had invested heavily in Huanyu's next movie. He was also a famous big boss in Beijing. Hence, out of courtesy, she took the initiative to greet him. Qian Xiaohua also recognized her. He laughed and said, "Haha, Assistant Li? Nice to meet you. I didn't expect to meet you here. Why, aren't you with your Mr. Mu?" Lilan reached out and shook his hand. She was about to answer. However, she saw the man's gaze turn and look straight at Yin Shirshir, who was standing behind her with an expressionless face. Qian Xiaohua's eyes widened slightly. There was surprise in his eyes, but more than that, there was a sigh of admiration. This girl was really beautiful. At first glance, she was already a celestial being. Her existence even brought light to this dimly lit corridor. Perhaps his gaze was too intense, or perhaps it was his gaze that was unique and invasive. Yin Shirshir came back to her senses and followed his gaze. Instantly, she felt a little uncomfortable from the piercing gaze, and unconsciously hid behind Lilan. However, her dodging action, in his eyes, suddenly became a different kind of feeling. She seemed to be shy. It was no wonder that she would be shy. Regardless of whether it was her dressing or her mannerisms, she looked very young and inexperienced. Putting aside her innocent tone, just her tender and beautiful little face was enough to make his heart itch. This girl was somewhat to his liking. It wasn't as if Qian Xiaohua had never played with women before. He was the pride of the business world, and an investor in the entertainment industry. He had been in the industry for many years, and could be said to have traveled among the flowers. With his successful status, he would play with women very fiercely. It wasn't that he hadn't played with innocent girls and schoolgirls before. He had played with plenty of them. But in this era of material desires, how could there be true innocence? They were all pretentious and delicate in order to become famous. At first, he felt that they were a little interesting and charming, but after a long time, most of them were exactly the same. It was inevitable that he would find them boring and annoying. Thus, as he sized her up, his gaze became even more indifferent and deep. He was like a hunter that had locked onto his target, and his eyes were filled with ambition and possessiveness. Lilan looked at his bright eyes, and the smile on his lips stiffened little by little. At the same time, he felt a little embarrassed. Chapter 350. At that moment, how could she not know what Qian Xiaohua was thinking? That look in his eyes, that undisguised desire to plunder on his face, all showed that this man was scheming something in his heart. Lilan secretly thought that this man must have taken a fancy to the little girl behind her at first glance. According to the past rules, if she were to bring an artist out and encounter such a situation, she would definitely promote it to Qian Xiaohua. After all, it was a great honor for an artist in her company to be fancied by this man. To be able to climb to a high branch overnight, like a sparrow flying to a branch to become a phoenix, that was naturally a great thing. Who would reject it? Of course, those girls who stepped into this circle for fame and fortune would be extremely happy. In the vanity market, sending women to those big bosses for entertainment could be considered an unspoken rule. However, now his target was Yin Shirshir, and this was not allowed. Thus, she subconsciously stood in front of Yin Shirshir, carefully protecting her, and at the same time blocking Qian Xiaohua's line of sight. This man then came back to his senses, still absent-mindedly glancing behind her from time to time, with a deep smile on his face. Mr. Qian, why are you staring at her like that? Don't scare her. Lilan smiled and said half-jokingly. Before becoming Mu Yaja's assistant, she was born as a manager of the public relations department. In terms of communication, dealing with and negotiating with some clients was naturally easy and handy. In terms of speaking, she was especially good. Just this funny sentence alone was enough to slightly calm the somewhat stiff atmosphere. Qian Xiaohua was also considered an experienced businessman. He had been at the wine table for many years, saying one thing in front of others and another behind others. In his heart, he had lived half his life and never taken off the mask on his face. Naturally, his ability to speak and read people's expressions was also top-notch. He could also see that this Lilan seemed to have the intention of protecting her. Thinking about it, this girl's identity was not ordinary. Could it be that she was the daughter of some family? A socialite from the upper class? However, it did not look like it. It was not because of anything else. It was just that this girl did not have the arrogance and brashness that people in this circle should have. Instead, she had an air of arrogance about her. However, this arrogance was the kind that was ingrained in his bones. He was stubborn and determined. Moreover, the clothes she was wearing did not look like those of an aristocratic family's daughter. They were all simple designs. One had to know that all socialites from aristocratic families dressed extravagantly. Therefore, he rejected this idea. Since he didn't have any background, there was nothing to worry about. He had taken a fancy to this girl. This girl is so pretty. Qian Xiaohua praised from the bottom of his heart. Then he smiled and looked at Yun Shirshir with an inquisitive look. Which family are you from? TSK, why haven't I seen it before? Oh, this girl, Lilan smiled. Although she was in a difficult position, she still smiled and introduced. This is an artist signed by Chairman Mu himself. She's a very talented newcomer, but I haven't officially debuted yet. Once I officially debut, I'll have to ask for your help, Co Qian. Chapter 351. She had deliberately emphasized the words Chairman Mu, and personally. The meaning behind her words was already unclear. However, Qian Xiaohua was also very stubborn. Once he set his eyes on a woman, his determination would not be shaken even by thunder. Hey, don't mention it. Ha! Of course, I can't not support Master Mu. He smiled and said a few more polite words. Then he looked at Yun Shirshir meaningfully. The latter was obviously not used to his almost bone-piercing gaze, so she avoided Li Lan's gaze even more. She really didn't like this man looking at her, as if he wanted to devour her completely. Noticing that she was avoiding his gaze, Li Lan's smile remained unchanged. However, she was slightly nervous. She couldn't help but secretly criticize the man in front of her. It was really difficult to deal with this man in front of her. Although she was Mu Yaja's assistant, Qian Xiaohua's prominent status was there, so she couldn't appear too strong. After all, she was just a small assistant. She had to be very careful with her words in front of a big shot. However, if she was to be more tactful, this old man was really cunning. He deliberately misunderstood her meaning and wanted to avoid her. He was determined to get Yin Shishir. However, if she insisted on Mu Yaja's face and rejected him, she was afraid that it would hurt the harmony between them. It didn't matter. The key was that Chairman Mu was now cooperating with him, and this cooperation was not a small matter. They had invested in a blockbuster film. Now that everything had been finalized, they only lacked one thing. If something like this happened halfway, she would have to bear the consequences. Moreover, she really couldn't understand Mu Yaja's thoughts. It was difficult for her to guess at the moment whether this Yin Shishir was important to Chairman Mu or not. If she called and asked in front of him, she wouldn't give him a way out. If Chairman Mu didn't respond, he would blame her for not doing things properly. She wouldn't be pleasing either side. It was a dilemma. Now Li Lan, who had been through a lot, was also trapped in the current situation. It was extremely difficult for her. In all honesty, she wanted to protect her. After all, he had fallen into the hands of this old fox. After being toyed with like this, he was afraid that he would not have a good ending. Regardless of anything else, for this little girl, half of her life would be ruined. She could tell that this girl had a strong sense of self-esteem. It was already difficult for her to stay by Chairman Mu's side. Not to mention this fat old man. Just by looking at her evasive expression, he could roughly guess her reaction. She definitely wouldn't agree no matter what. But how should she deal with this man? Young Master Mu, you have good taste. Speaking of which, this little girl, Qian Xiaohua said with a smile as he approached Yin Shishir. She was shocked and quickly retracted her hand. Her body dodged to the side as she stared at him with extreme vigilance. She looked like a frightened kitten as all the hair on her body stood on end. Her brows were filled with a thick hostility. Although she didn't know what this man had in mind for her, she sharply discovered a terrifying ambition in his eyes. This ambition was exactly the same as He Lingxiang's when he looked at her. She didn't want this man to touch her at all. Even if it was just a strand of hair, she didn't want him to touch her. Chairman Qian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Chapter 352. Why are you so afraid of me? It's not like I'm going to eat you up. Li Lan was anxious, but she maintained a respectful smile on her face. She smiled and said, Hey Qian. Mr. Qian, this girl is still so young. Of course she doesn't know anything. I'm afraid that she won't be able to serve you well. Why don't I pick a few girls from the company who know how to do things and send them to you? What do you think? This woman wasn't a simple character. She was too slick in doing things. However, these words made Yin Shishir's hair stand on end. She had only heard that Huanyu Entertainment was one of the top entertainment companies in the country. Most of the artists who came from Huanyu were outstanding stars in the film or music industry. However, according to Li Lan's words, Huanyu was actually referring to them as serving people? Was there no place in the entertainment industry that was clean? Qian was a little unhappy. He shook his head and looked at her mockingly. Miss Li, are you trying to brush me off? It's not that I want to say this, but even if you search the entire Huanyu, you won't be able to find another person like her. Don't talk about those mediocre women in your company. Hearing the impatience and disgust in his tone, Li Lan's face remained calm, but she was a little flustered inside. Could it be that she had to watch Qian Xiaohua openly take Yin Shishir away in front of her? If she stopped him forcefully, she was afraid that she would be neglecting him. To be honest, this man was definitely not someone she could afford to offend. With such a tough attitude, even if she brought up the CEO, this man would still be fearless. It was no wonder that he didn't care. Everyone in the entertainment industry knew that Master Mu would never treat the artistes in his company seriously. Women were dispensable. Hence, Qian Xiaohua naturally didn't mind. He was probably thinking that it was just a woman. Would Master Mu be so calculative with him? However, she hadn't been by the CEO's side for so many years for nothing. She could more or less tell that this girl was special in the CEO's heart. It was special. Li Lan sighed inwardly and held Yun Shishir's hand tightly. Qian Xiaohua waved at Yun Shishir and motioned for her to come over. However, Yun Shishir remained silent and expressionless as she leaned against Qian Xiaohua's side. Qian Xiaohua was a little anxious. Aya. You lass. How could he be so immature? How did Miss Li teach you? Yun Shishir pursed her lips and opened her mouth. She wanted to scold him fiercely, but no sound came out. However, Li Lan squeezed her hand tightly. Li Lan seemed to be telling her not to speak, so she bit her lip again. Li Lan hurriedly said, Mr. Qian, you have to do it for Mr. Mu's sake, right? After all, this girl belongs to him. And no one can touch her. President Qian Yu. Chapter 353. Since Mu Yaja was not around, he could do whatever he wanted. Who did not know how to do one thing in front of others and another behind their backs? When Li Lan relayed his words back to Mu Yaja, there was no testimony, so he could just deny it. Who would believe a mere assistant? When the time came, Li Lan would be in deep trouble. She had to admit that this sly old fox had a shrewd plan. Li Lan was stunned. Although her expression did not change, she secretly sucked in a breath of cold air. This Qian Xiaohua was really gutsy. However, when she saw him reaching out to take Yun Shishir away by force, she instinctively stood in front of her protectively. Just as her mind went blank from nervousness, an extremely gloomy sneer was heard from the end of the corridor. Tell me, whose face do I have to give in to? This casual sentence was laced with a gloomy coldness. It was like a sharp sword sealed in ice, piercing one's heart to the point of numbness. Qian Xiaohua was stunned, and his hands froze. How could he not recognize this voice? However, this voice was so cold that even the expression on his face froze. After a moment of shock, he abruptly turned around and saw a stalwart figure slowly walking toward him. The man had a head of black hair, and was dressed in a well-ironed handmade suit. He was arrogant, domineering, and confident. His cold face was arrogant and domineering, and his aura was domineering. He was as handsome as a god. The man strolled over from afar. His steps were steady and calm, just like a lion walking in its own territory. Behind him was a gorgeously dressed woman with heavy makeup on her face and wavy flaxen hair, which was the most popular nowadays. She was very Western-looking. However, Qian Xiaohua still recognized her at a glance. This woman was Huanyu Entertainment's newly signed newcomer, Lu Jingtian. At that moment his scalp tightened. His eyelids fluttered violently, and his heart pounded like thunder. His old face instantly turned pale from shock. What is he doing here? Could it be that he had heard everything that she had just said? D***. He was done for. Mu Yaja stopped in his tracks and looked up at Yun Shishir, who was hiding behind Li Lan. Seeing that the girl was hiding behind Li Lan, only revealing a corner of her clothes and her small head, the corners of his lips naturally curved into a faint smile. This girl's way of protecting herself really made one feel a little helpless. Did she think that everything would be fine just by hiding like this? He looked at her and said in a deep voice, "Come here." His gaze was fixated on her body. Without a doubt, the bystanders naturally knew who he was calling. His voice was not loud, but it was powerful, and there was a hint of doting in his tone. Even Lu Jingtian, who was beside him, was a little puzzled. It was as if she had never seen this man so easily reveal such a tender side of him. She frowned slightly and her heart was filled with mixed feelings. She followed his line of sight and looked at Yun Shishir with hostility in her eyes. She also recognized that this girl was none other than Yun Shishir, who had stolen the limelight at the banquet that day. Why is it her again? Why is she here? This woman is really haunting me. Chapter 354. Lu Jingtian's heart ached as she pursed her lips tightly. Her face was filled with undisguised displeasure. She saw the girl's pale, bloodless face behind Li Lan. Her eyes were guarded, as if she had been frightened or aggrieved. She stubbornly pursed her lips and stared at the man with furrowed brows, but she did not take a step forward. This girl was really stubborn. There was no doubt that she was a beauty in the making. Li Lan, on the other hand, was secretly surprised. Even she did not expect the boss to suddenly appear here. In her moment of shock, she saw the boss asking Yun Shishir to go over, but the lass did not move. She seemed to be angry, so she reached out and pulled the girl out from behind her, pushing her in the direction of her boss. Silly girl, why aren't you going over? Yin Shirshir lost her footing from the push and fell toward Muyaja, straight into his muscular chest. She awkwardly got up and retreated, wanting to keep a distance from him, but the man's strong arm wrapped around her waist domineeringly. She was forced to snuggle against his chest, and all she could hear was his strong heartbeat. That heartbeat was like a tranquilizer, and it quickly brushed away the uneasiness in her heart. Thus she did not resist and obediently stayed put. The man lowered his head and looked at her little head buried in his chest. His thin lips curled up. He was obviously very satisfied with her submission, but he was still a little dissatisfied inside. In her mind, it had only been a few days since he had last looked for her. It had only been a few days. He did not expect this last to be so restless and quickly attract bees and butterflies for him. She had attracted the attention of others. This more or less made him feel unhappy in his heart. Just like his boldness and means in the business world, this man's possessiveness was unreasonably strong when it came to relationships. Although he did not care much for other women and could summon them at his beck and call, this girl had an invisible and unique place in his heart. Although he did not admit it, nor did he realize it, it was undeniable that he found other men touching, peeking at her, and drooling over her to be an eyesore. I'll settle the score with her later. Lifting his chin slightly, Muyaja swept his gaze across the room, and stared at Qian Xiaohua like a ferocious tiger. The latter's heart trembled when he was stared at by that sharp gaze. His scalp immediately went numb, as if he was being stared at by some ferocious beast. Qian Xiaohua turned pale with fright. His domineering aura was quickly defeated. He lowered his head in disappointment and called out weakly, "Chairman Mu." This made it seem like he was extremely guilty. In the past, Qian Xiaohua's status was enough to address Muyaja as young Master Mu. However, he was so nervous that he subconsciously changed the way he addressed him, and addressed him as Chairman Mu. Lu Jingtian smiled and casually said, "Oh, you're right. Boss Qian, long time no see. It's rare to see you today, and I heard your loud voice as soon as I arrived. No wonder young Master Mu is unhappy. What you said just now was too arrogant." Chapter 355. Qian Xiaohua's forehead was sweating profusely and his voice trembled slightly. I didn't mean it, I didn't mean it." Muyaja's lips curled up slightly, but it was an extremely cold smile. His gaze deepened and the coldness in his eyes became even more gloomy. "Chief Qian is very interested in my woman?" After saying that, his arm forcefully wrapped around Yin Shirshir's shoulders and pulled her towards himself. This action seemed to be a silent declaration. This woman was his. The man who was still holding his head high immediately lowered his head humbly, like a tortoise grandson. Beads of sweat dripped down his forehead, and he was extremely flustered. This? Qian Xiaohua was in a dilemma. It wasn't appropriate to admit it, but it wasn't right to not admit it either. He was afraid that this man had heard everything that he had said just now. Otherwise, why would he be glaring at him like a tiger eyeing its prey? He had only said those words to show off when Muyaja wasn't around. Who would have thought that he would coincidentally bump into him, and even hear every single word? He didn't dare to raise his head to look at the man's gloomy expression. Just hearing that cold voice was enough to scare him out of his wits. To be honest, he had only seen Muyaja once. Most of the time, it was when they were talking about cooperation at the wine table. In his eyes, Muyaja was the noble and arrogant crown prince of an aristocratic family. Although he was young, perhaps it was because he came from an aristocratic background, he had been pampered and cultivated an arrogant personality. It was to the extent that he always looked down on everyone and never put anyone in his eyes. However, when it came to his background, it was extremely mysterious. At least, the people in their circle didn't know anything about it. After being together for so many years, they only knew a little. He only knew that on the surface, this young Master Mu was the famous entertainment tycoon in the capital, and he was in charge of 2 entertainment companies with strong qualifications. However, in actual fact, he was an important figure in an aristocratic family. The power behind him was something that they couldn't afford to offend. With just a yawn, the entire financial street would be shaken. This wasn't a groundless rumor. Just based on the fact that the mayor had to condescend to meet him, it could be seen that this kid's background was extraordinary. Because of this, everyone respected this young CEO and bowed down to him. Rather than saying that they were in awe of him, it was more accurate to say that they were afraid of the mysterious power behind him. And this man, in actual fact, he was also a master with ruthless methods. There was a saying in the circle: if you can't become young Master Mu's partner, then you can't become his enemy. Otherwise, the consequences would be dire. Qian Xiaohua naturally didn't want to infuriate him over such a small matter. Hence he put on a serious expression. Chairman Mu, you see, it's just a woman. It's fine if you don't want to give her up. This matters. Why should we hurt each other's relationship? Hearing that, Mu Yaja glanced at him from the corner of his eyes. His eyes were languid and his angular face was filled with coldness as he said in a deep voice, "The words you said earlier, I don't like to hear it." His voice was slow and deep, with deep meaning behind it. Anyone who heard it would be able to sense his dissatisfaction. His heart skipped a beat as Qian Xiaohua gave a dry laugh and lowered his head to apologize. Chapter 356. Sigh. Those are all harmless jokes. Oh, harmless? Muyaja coldly raised his eyes. His deep, almond-shaped eyes shone with a sharp glint. This. Qian Xiaohua stammered, not knowing what to say. Muyaja sneered and said indifferently in a low voice, "Mr. Qian, how can I feel at ease working with you when you're like this?" Qian Xiaohua was stunned, clearly not expecting him to say that. He immediately looked up with an ugly expression and saw Muyaja's handsome face full of indifference. "Master Mu, what do you mean? Could it be that he was going to give up on their collaboration? What kind of international joke is this?" This investment was highly valued by Qian Xiaohua. This blockbuster would bring about considerable profits for both parties. Once he invested in it, he would be able to get rich returns. In the entire capital, only Muyaja had such influence and boldness. But he actually wanted to kick out their cooperation just because of a woman like this? He had already drawn up the investment for this blockbuster, and he only needed one final push before it could be put into operation. Alas, he was not the only one surprised. Even Lu Jingtian, who was beside him, was shocked. She had never seen him fall out with a business partner over a woman. Even Li Lan, who was used to seeing Muyaja do as he pleased, was a little surprised. Her gaze involuntarily shifted to Yun Shirshir, who was in his arms. It seemed that Yun Shirshir was indeed special to the boss. It seemed that she had done the right thing by defending her earlier. You should know what I mean. He was never one to repeat himself twice. He was disgusted by the way this man stared at his woman. It was extremely annoying. Even without Qian Xiaohua in this blockbuster, there would still be many investors lining up to be selected by him. He would not be the only one left. Only then did Qian Xiaohua panic. "Mr. Mu, can't we talk things over? Why do you have to force me into a dead end for this little lass?" Muyaja glanced at him expressionlessly and sneered. He could not be bothered with him anymore. Thus, without another look at him, he proudly strode off with Yun Shirshir in his arms. This man did not intend to give him any face. That resolute back view was simply too domineering. Lu Jingtian stared at Muyaja's back as he left. She wanted to follow him, but if she did, it would make her seem unreserved. She couldn't help but feel a little stuffy in her heart, and her hands couldn't help but clench into fists. Something seemed to flash through her eyes, and her brows slowly furrowed. Qian Xiaohua's stiff smile only disappeared when the man was a distance away. Furrowing his brows, he glared at Li Lan and Lu Jingtian in shame and indignation. He gritted his teeth and scolded. "What a load of sh*t. Damn it. With just one sentence, he kicked me out of the partnership. Is that woman more important than this investment?" Li Lan smiled faintly. "Mr. Qian, I told you earlier that this girl's identity is not ordinary, but you didn't believe me. Isn't this what happened?" Qian Xiaohua was also a hot-blooded man. He was already in a fit of anger, and now that someone was adding insult to injury, he was even more furious. Chapter 357. Assistant Li? Are you gloating now that my business deal is ruined? She smiled reservedly. How would I dare to laugh at you? Although she said that, she was inwardly overjoyed. That smile was an eyesore to Qian Xiaohua. Now even a small assistant was laughing at him. He angrily cursed in the direction of Mu Yaja's departure. D***. Why are you so arrogant? Do you think I want to work with you? Who do you think you are? Lu Jingtian returned to her senses when she heard this. Turning her head to look at him coldly, she coolly said, Mr. Qian, as a person in this industry, it's best to leave a way out for yourself when you speak. You must know clearly what you should and shouldn't say. Do you think you can gossip about Master Mu? Qian Xiaohua glanced at her and was about to rebuke her, but on second thought, this woman's background was not simple. Although she was not a mysterious big shot like Mu Yaja, her background was not to be trifled with. The reason why she had so many resources waiting in line before her debut was that she had someone backing her. Her father was one of Huanyu's top executives. Just this identity alone was enough for her to do whatever she wanted. The Lu family was born into a rich family, and her mother was also someone important. After thinking about it, he chose to swallow his anger. It's just a woman. Is there a need to be so eager? How despicable. Qian Xiaohua could not help but curse. She's just a woman. Is there a need for that chap to treat me like this? I've been looking forward to this investment case for a long time. Mr. Qian, I advise you to be more polite with your words. This time, it's just a failed collaboration. If your words fall on Master Mu's ears next time, do you still have a way out in the capital? Qian Xiaohua suffered a setback. His face turned green and red, but he could not bring himself to do it. He snorted angrily, turned around and walked away. Li Lan and Lu Jingtian looked at each other, and then smiled at each other as a greeting. No matter how high her background was, she still treated Li Lan, who was by Mu Yaja's side, with respect. She smiled and asked, Big sisterly, who is that girl? Li Lan was about to answer, but after thinking for a while, she paused and said with a smile, She's just a small artist in the company. It's not worth worrying about. Her answer was very vague and ambiguous. It was no wonder that she was so wary of Han Jingyi. After all, Lu Jingtian was known for her ruthlessness in the industry. She often relied on the power behind her to ostracize newcomers. There were even rumors that she had slapped a newbie in front of everyone because she had badmouthed her behind her back. The newcomer's face was so swollen that he had to wear a mask on stage. After that incident, due to the power behind her, he had no choice but to settle the matter. From then on, he would respectfully address her as Sister Lu whenever he saw her. His predecessor had signed a contract with Haina Corporation, but for some unknown reason, he resolutely transferred to Huanyu Entertainment at the risk of breaching the contract and paying huge compensation. At first, Li Lan didn't quite understand her intentions, but after all, Li Lan's mind was clear, and now she had guessed 70 to 80% of her intentions. This was probably an ulterior motive. She did not want Yun Shishir to inadvertently offend her before she had a firm foothold in the industry. Chapter 358. Lu Jingtian smiled. Even though her answer was perfunctory, she did not pursue the matter. She merely smiled faintly and said, I was supposed to have a private date with Master Mu tonight, but someone interrupted it. I am very unhappy. She paused for a moment before continuing in a slow and drawn-out tone. Since this girl is under your care then? Cicely, I hope that such a thing won't happen again. Don't do it again. You know what to do, don't you? Li Lan slowly nodded. The smile at the corner of her lips was somewhat forced as her heart turned cold. Her words were considered a deterrent. Late at night, the evening breeze was slightly chilly. Along the way, Yun Shishir's face was pale, while the man's expression was even gloomier. She was practically half carried and half hugged by him the whole way. Her whole body was in his embrace, and it was as if she was about to become part of his flesh and blood. She raised her head, only to see the man's unusually cold expression. He seemed to be angry. She did not know why he was angry though. She, on the other hand, felt a chill in her heart when she heard the conversation between Li Lan and Qian Xiaohua. Mu Yaja carried Yun Shishir to the back seat and closed the door. The chauffeur started the car, and the streamlined sports car sped out of the clubhouse's entrance. She hurriedly broke free from him the moment she sat down. Her expression was somewhat unnatural as she leaned to the side. She glanced at him, only to see him leaning leisurely against the seat. His straight eyebrows were slightly lowered, and there was a hint of the calm before the storm between his brows. Yin Shirshir's face involuntarily tensed up. Her hands unconsciously clenched the leather cushion beneath her as her heart seemed to be weighed down by a heavy stone. Muyaja looked at her coldly. His lips suddenly curled into a half-smile. "Come here." Yin Shirshir pursed her lips but did not move for a long time. She did not want to be so close to him. Moreover, he was now exuding such a sharp aura. It was as if she would be stabbed by the sharp, cold aura around him if she were to get any closer. The man, however, was dissatisfied with her stubborn behavior. "I never repeat my words twice." His eyes narrowed dangerously and his voice was as cold as ice. His slightly raised eyebrows were like the sharp edge of a sword. She was stunned, but in the end, she still moved a few inches closer to him. She saw the man suddenly wrap his arm around her and easily pull her towards him. His large palm pinched her chin, and the smile in his deep and mesmerizing eyes deepened. He said casually, "When I'm not around, you still know how to seduce people?" He lowered his head and looked at her face. It was really alluring. Between her frowning eyebrows and narrowed eyes, there was a flirtatious flow. It was really grinding one's mind. Even though it had only been 2 days since he last saw her, he missed her dearly. Especially when he held her in his arms, the desire hidden deep in his heart was immediately triggered. All the hormones in his body were stimulated, and he couldn't wait to take her in the car. However, in this aspect, he was extremely stingy. He was stingy in displaying her beauty in front of others, stingy in showing her bewitchment to anyone other than him. Hence, when he thought of how that old man had looked at her with an unfathomable gaze, and how he had wanted to touch her with his dirty hands, just thinking about it made him feel extremely dazzled. If he hadn't coincidentally had a meal at the same private club, would this little thing have been snatched away by someone else? Chapter 359. In the past, he also knew what kind of person Qian Xiaohua was. His only hobby was to play with women. Sometimes, when he worked with him, he would also send a few female artistes under Huanyu to accompany him. But after a few times, did he silently think that as long as it was a woman from Huanyu, he could casually touch her? Muyaja's gaze was extremely dangerous. Yin Shirshir was stunned for a moment, then immediately realized what he meant. Her face suddenly turned pale, and she shook her head hard. Saying that she seduced him? I didn't. She denied it heavily. How was she seducing him? What kind of crime was he accusing her of for no reason? Muyaja naturally knew that she didn't, but he just loved to tease her like this. He just loved to see her angry gaze. She was just like an angry kitten, ready to bare her fangs and brandish her claws at him, if he provoked her slightly. It seemed like this was really a bad hobby. He understood it deep down, but he just loved to tease her like this. He just loved to see how cute she looked when she was mad. He smiled slightly, and his muscular arms simply carried her to sit on his body. Then what did I see just now? If I wasn't here, would you have left with him? I wouldn't. How could she have left with him? You're lying. His large palm clasped the back of her neck, and the man's lips curled into a devilish smile. He leaned close to her ear and whispered, "If I hadn't arrived in time just now, would you have left with him?" Yin Shirshir bit her lip. Just as she was about to speak, she lowered her eyebrows. It was only then that she realized how ambiguous and intimate their current position of hugging each other was. The two bodies were tightly pressed together, and there was no gap between them. In an instant, her face and ears were dyed red. Even her fair and delicate skin was slightly flushed. She couldn't help but move back, but he hugged her back to his chest again. "Say it." "I wouldn't." "Why not?" he asked again. Yin Shirshir said angrily, "You wouldn't. You wouldn't. You seem to dislike me? Why?" His voice was very gentle, low, and extremely magnetic. It was full of bewitchment. "Which part of me doesn't satisfy you?" The man's warm breath instantly heated up her small and cute earlobes. Yin Shirshir pursed her lips and turned her face away, but he pinched her face. Muyaja's eyes gradually darkened. He lowered his head, and the tip of his tongue gently touched her lips were as sweet as always. "Answer." Yin Shirshir gritted her teeth, but she really couldn't answer. The palm on the back of her neck suddenly pressed down, and she was caught off guard as she leaned in close to his face. Looking at the handsome face was so close, Yun's face. Suddenly lowering his head. The man's slightly cold lips covered her small mouth and pressed against hers. He coldly asked, "Do you like that old man?" She wanted to shake her head fiercely, but her neck was held tightly by him, so she could not move at all. However, her mouth was blocked by him, and she didn't dare to move for a moment. Muyaja narrowed his eyes, admiring the helplessness in her eyes. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Or do you like me?" Yin was stunned, and she instinctively wanted to deny it. How could she like this heartless and cold man in front of her? Chapter 360. Seeing her silent reaction, the man smiled devilishly and said in an unquestionable tone, "Answer me." Yin stubbornly refused to say a word, but she suddenly sensed his hand wantonly reaching into her clothes. Her heart skipped a beat, and she subconsciously glanced back from the corner of her eye. However, she saw the chauffeur continue driving as if he didn't see or hear anything. He didn't even glance at the rearview mirror. Every time the man made a move, she would glance at the chauffeur again with lingering fear. Sensing her worried gaze, the chauffeur pressed a button, and the partition slowly rose, completely separating the front seat and the back seat. Even so, she still panicked. "Don't." She reached out and grabbed his wrist, saying softly, "Not here." From her words, it was clear that she was already giving in. However, Muyaja wasn't satisfied with this answer. He held her hand back and continued his actions with her fingertips. Yin was embarrassed and annoyed. She struggled, but the strength in his hand was ridiculously overbearing. Thus, she took the initiative to hug his neck with her right hand and lightly pecked his lips. She was taking the initiative to please him again. "Answer me." However, the man was like a devil. He didn't give up and whispered softly in her ear, "Otherwise I'll do you in the car." Yin was stunned. She saw a playful smile in the man's eyes. There was no doubt that he would really do that. Yin bit her lip and said softly, "I like you." There seemed to be some emotions in her eyes that were struggling and intertwining. However, these words were a little against her will. However, the man was in the mood to tease her. He naughtily bit her collarbone and unscrupulously admired her face that was flushed red due to excessive nervousness. He asked softly, "What do you like about me?" Yin looked up in shock and stared into the depths of his deep eyes. "Tell me, what do you like about me?" The man chuckled and pulled her hand downward. Here, as if her fingertips had been scalded, she quickly retracted her hand and said word by word, "No, don't be like this." She looked at his handsome face, and his eyes were fixed on her face. However, she felt that she was so unbearable and cheap right now. Vaguely, Qian Xiaohua's aggressive and insulting words rang in her ears again. She suddenly suspected that in this man's heart, she was also a woman with such an existence. One that was as cheap as a commodity. Once it was labeled, it could be casually traded by anyone. She didn't know why, but she was a little concerned about his thoughts. He saw that she had a lot on her mind, and her expression was extremely solemn. However, she was also a little sad and a little dazed. Muyaja immediately retracted his smile. He thought of Qian Xiaohua and wondered what he had said to her that caused this woman to look at him with a gaze that was more or less bone-chilling. He pinched her chin and used a little strength with his fingertips. He was afraid that he would hurt her, so his movements were deliberately gentler. He asked in a deep voice, "What did he say to you?" Those words were simply too embarrassing. She couldn't say it out loud. Seeing that his expression was getting worse, she slowly said, "He just wants me to accompany him for a night." Chapter 361. As soon as she said that, Muyaja's gaze immediately turned gloomy. In the restaurant, he had just walked out of the private room when he heard Li Lan's voice. Amidst his astonishment, he also heard Qian Xiaohua's voice. However, as they were too far away, he couldn't hear their conversation clearly. He could only vaguely hear that Qian Xiaohua wanted to take this little woman away. After observing for a while, he stepped forward. However, he didn't know that Qian Xiaohua was actually using the cheapest currency to measure his woman. Yin said in a low voice, "Am I like that in your heart too? A woman who can be sold for a price?" Seeing that his expression was dark and cold and didn't say anything, she anxiously said, I'm not a commodity, so don't sell me to others. What responded to her was his ferocious kiss. Without waiting for her to finish her sentence, he fiercely sealed her mouth and kissed every last bit of her broken words. The tip of his tongue recklessly invaded her little mouth and wildly swept across her mouth. His thin lips tightly pressed against her little mouth. He didn't seem to want to give her a chance to breathe. He bit the tip of her tongue and violently plundered her along with her breath. She even thought that she was going to suffocate and faint in his arms in the next moment. Just as her consciousness was about to go blank, he finally let go of her. Yin Shirshir was extremely tired as she laid on his shoulder. Her red lips greedily took in large mouthfuls of air. As she gradually regained her consciousness, she seemed to hear his deep voice. "You're my woman. Who dares to touch you?" His words revealed a bit of arrogance, but also unintentionally revealed a bit of undetectable gentleness. However, she was sensitive enough to feel his gentleness, but this gentleness pierced her heart to the point of pain. She also didn't know why her heart was hurting so badly. It twitched, and she felt a little uncomfortable. The tip of her nose was also sour. This man's domineering protection made her feel an inexplicable sense of security. In her heart, she actually tasted a little bit of sweetness. This man was indeed domineering, but this feeling of being protected in his arms was very good. Asterisk in the VIP room. In front of the billiard table, a devilishly handsome man gracefully crouched beside the table. The cue in his hand was aimed at the billiard ball. A pair of long, narrow, and soul-stirring eyes flickered with a devilish light. Dong! With a crisp sound of impact, the black 8-ball neatly shot into the hole. Whether it was the angle or the strength, it was impeccable. Gu Jinglian stood up casually, his slender hand gently stroking the cue stick, his lips curling into a playful smile. "Director Yang, why are you just sitting there? You're not moving at all. You should play to your heart's content, shouldn't you?" As he spoke, he smiled and turned around. "Look, I won again. You have no chance again, hee." Everyone looked at his strange and unpredictable smile, disdain and contempt on his cold and elegant face, and they all swallowed with difficulty. Gu Jinglian was smiling, but everyone present felt a chill run down their spines. They were frightened by this man's temperamental mood swings and his mood swings. At the side, in a corner, young Shouqing sat on the sofa with a stiff expression. His whole body sank into the sofa, his face pale and his shoulders trembling uncontrollably. Chapter 362. At his feet, there was a corpse lying quietly. Its eyes were terrifyingly wide open. 3 minutes ago, the corpse was still alive. It was one of Yang Shouqing's bodyguards. Now there was a bleeding hole between his eyebrows. He had offended young Master Gu with one sentence and ended up like this. It was too horrible to look at. Fresh blood flowed onto the floor, filling the room with the thick smell of blood. The temperature of his skin was gradually cooling. The terrifying atmosphere of death enveloped the large room. Qin Zhou looked at Yang Shouqing's ashen face with sympathy and walked to the table to arrange the balls. Jilin was playing with a few billiard balls on the side, but he looked as if he was used to this scene. Gu Jinglian slowly sat down on the sofa and lit a cigarette. His slender hand brushed the slightly messy hair on his forehead as he said slowly, "Mr. Yang, why aren't you saying anything? Could it be that Jinglian didn't treat you well enough and you didn't have enough fun?" His body sank into the sofa. Beside him, 2 sexy girls dressed in sexy and revealing clothes immediately came up to him. Their graceful and exquisite bodies slowly straddled his body, carefully holding his handsome face, and planted a kiss on his lips. Gu Jinglian smiled flirtatiously. His large palm suddenly reached under the woman's skirt and moved up, teasing her body. Yang Shouqing was inexplicably shocked. "No. Young Master Gu, you're being too serious. How's the injury on your hand recovering, Mr. Yang?" Gu Jinglian didn't look at him. He was focused on playing with the woman who kept touching him coquettishly. His tone was chilling. "It's fine now. If Xingzi offended you in any way, tell me. I'll apologize to you on his behalf." Yang Shouqing's face stiffened. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Apologize? Asking the head of the Gu family, the most powerful family in the underworld, to apologize to him wasn't just an apology. It was asking for his life. Yang Shouqing was filled with regret at this moment. He didn't expect Gu Xing's brother to be Gu Jinglian of the underworld Gu family. This was incredible. He had offended someone he shouldn't have offended. Previously, he did not know who Gu Xingze was. He only knew that this young man was very arrogant and dared to challenge him. Who was Yang Shoucheng? The godfather of Hong Kong cinema, a legend of his generation. He was the man who dominated the Hong Kong film industry for 20 years. He had been in the entertainment industry for so many years. With his strong background and methods, no one had dared to give him any face. Gu Xingze was the first and only one. After the cocktail party, Qin Zhou had also brought a few of the people in charge of Huanyu to personally apologize. However, Yang Shoucheng was proud and arrogant. How could he be appeased so easily? The reason he asked Qin Zhou for Gu Xingze was because he wanted to get Gu Xingze to come over and teach him a lesson. He wanted him to know that the entertainment industry was huge, and that he, Yang Shoucheng, was a man of his word. Don't think that you can look down on others just because you've been in the industry for 10 years and have been hailed as a heavenly king idol. Even the higher-ups of Huanyu had to give him face. Gu Xingze did not know the immensity of heaven and earth and dared to go against him? However, he didn't expect that Gu Xingze wasn't a simple character. The Gu family of the underworld was the only wealthy family in Beijing that had been passed down for hundreds of years. Chapter 363. It could be said that the Gu family was perhaps the only family that could rival the Mu family. How big was the Gu family's territory? No one knew. Although they had used some means to whitewash their family's reputation, they were still the underworld in their bones. Whether it was their methods or their style, they were all ruthless. Especially Gu Jinglian. He was an extremely dangerous and terrifying person. When Gu Jinglian became the head of the Gu family, he was only 23 years old. However, as soon as he gained power, he immediately revealed his ambitious and ruthless side. On the second day of his ascension, he eliminated all the hall masters and retainers who were disloyal to him. His methods were so ruthless that it made people tremble in fear. Compared to Gu Jinglian's methods, Yang Shoucheng's level was simply not enough. As the crown prince of the underworld, Gu Jinglian's style was mysterious and unpredictable due to his identity. Very few people had seen his true face. It was rumored that those who had seen his true face no longer existed in this world. Yang Shoucheng's legs could not help but tremble. How could he not be afraid? Although he had been running amok in Hong Kong for so many years, he had always maintained a sense of respect for the Gu family, a powerful underworld family. Gu Jinglian was famous for being temperamental and unpredictable. He was a truly terrifying person. Even if he was smiling, his coldness seeped right into one's bones. Because you would never know if you would die in his hands in the next moment. The door was suddenly pushed open. Gu Xingze pushed the door open and walked in. Gu Jinglian looked up. Seeing him, the corners of his lips curled up slightly. "Xingze, you're here?" "Brother." Second Master Gu. Yang Shoucheng's face suddenly turned pale. He rushed over and knelt down heavily in front of Gu Xingze. Under extreme fear, his thick lips cracked and trembled. Large beads of cold sweat seeped out of his forehead and rolled down. Gu Xingze kicked his hand away unhappily. "Mr. Yang, what are you doing?" "Xingze, do you want to explain to Master Gu that what happened between us was purely a misunderstanding, just a misunderstanding?" Gu Jinglian said nonchalantly. "Xingze, did you offend Mr. Yang in some way? Hurry up and apologize to him." His voice was very gentle, but when it entered her ears, it made her shudder. Gu Xingze said calmly, "Brother, I didn't." Qin Zhou said helplessly, "Young Master Gu, it's actually not a big deal. It's just a small misunderstanding. I've already explained it to Mr. Yang, but he didn't seem willing to give me face and insisted that I hand Xingze over to him. That's what happened." "Mr. Yang, you're in the wrong here." Gu Jinglian slowly stood up and paced around Yang Shoucheng. Shaking his head, he sighed. "My younger brother grew up overseas, so he doesn't know much about the rules of the underworld in Beijing." After a pause, the corners of his lips curled up slightly. Then he said calmly, "According to the rules, as his brother, I'm also half a guardian. If he has offended you in any way, you can look for me directly. I'll apologize to you on his behalf. But do you think you can take away a member of the Gu family just because you want to? If you take my woman away, how will I, Gu Jinglian, Be able to show my face? What will happen to the Gu family's prestige? Chapter 364. Young Master Gu. I didn't know who he was at first. Yang Shouqing wiped the sweat off his forehead with his sleeve, and said with an ugly expression, You didn't know? That can't be. Gu Jinglian leaned elegantly in front of the billiard table. He played with a poker in his hand and said faintly, I think you clearly don't care about me, Gu Jinglian. Yang Shouqing's expression changed. He immediately turned pale with fright and said, Young Master Gu, you've wronged me. I didn't know that Gu Xingze was the second young master of the Gu family. Gu Jinglian's lips curled into a smile, but his voice was extremely cold. He said, Young Shouqing, I don't care about how glorious you were in Hong Kong in the past. But since you have one foot in the capital, you should know whose territory the capital is. I know. I always knew. You knew? You knew, but you still dared to mark my territory? Gu Jinglian's gaze swept over. His shiny leather shoes heavily stepped on Yang Shouqing's hand. He said fiercely, Do you know whose name is engraved on the capital's territory? Who do you think you are? You're in the Gu family's territory, and you don't know how to follow the rules. Do you think I will tolerate you? Yang Shouqing was in so much pain that his face turned pale. In a moment of confusion, he suddenly realized what Gu Jinglian was referring to. His face turned pale for a moment. I wouldn't dare. Young Master Gu, you've misunderstood. I definitely didn't mean that. Please don't lower yourself to my level. Yang Shouqing nervously grabbed Gu Jinglian's trousers and begged for mercy. But he didn't know that his so-called goodwill had violated Gu Jinglian's taboo. TSK. Gu Jinglian's thin lips curled slightly and his eyebrows furrowed in disgust. Look, you've dirted my trousers. What should I do? After saying that, he suddenly stretched out his leg and kicked him away. Yang Shouqing rolled a few times in a sorry state before he slumped against the corner of the table. His nose was bruised and his face was swollen. He was in so much pain that he sucked in a breath of cold air. His eyes couldn't even move. He saw his well-trained subordinates walking over expressionlessly. An incomparably mournful scream was heard. Blood flowed like a river in the private room. Yang Shouqing cradled his broken arm, his entire face red from the extreme pain. He kept wailing and rolling on the ground in a sorry state. Gu Jinglian glanced at him coldly and turned to leave the room. Qin Zhou and Ji Lin followed suit. Before Gu Xingze left, he walked up to him and grabbed his neck, warning him coldly, I'm warning you, don't even think about touching her. The she he was referring to was none other than Yin Shirshir. However, Yang Shouqing was in a daze from the pain, and could only nod his head randomly. Gu Xingze felt relieved and left. When he walked out of the room, he took out his phone and saw Yin Shirshir's message. It was getting late, and she should be going back. Asterisk. The car drove all the way back to the villa. Yin Shirshir looked out of the car window and her gaze suddenly froze. At the main entrance of the villa, there was a landscape stone carved from a huge rock of the origin mountain. The words Yin Shanshir Yi were carved on it. Yin Shanshir Yi was the name of the villa. Chapter 365. Yin Shanshir Yi. What do you think of this name? Yin Shanshir Yi, Yin Shirshir. There was no need to explain the meaning behind it. She followed the man out of the car, but he pulled her into his embrace with his arm. Her head bumped into his chest. She furrowed her brows in pain, but when she looked up, she saw him smiling teasingly with a hint of playfulness in his eyes. Didn't you want to send me home? Yin Shirshir fumed. Why are we here? I missed you. Accompany me tonight. The man felt a little smug. If Yin Tianyu knew that the boring summer camp at the kindergarten was specially arranged by a certain man, he would surely gnash his teeth in anger. Back at the villa, she began to feel restless and sat motionless on the sofa. She watched the man, who had taken a shower, leisurely walk back and forth in front of her. He was wearing a loose bathrobe and was leisurely wiping his wet hair. Unintentionally, her eyes would involuntarily wander to his slightly exposed chest. She would then turn away with a burning face. Mu Yaja walked to the wine cabinet and poured himself a glass of vodka. From the corner of his eye, he glanced coldly at the woman, who was still sitting motionlessly on the sofa. She seemed to be afraid of something, or perhaps she was hiding from something. He had been traveling the business world since he was 18 years old. He had to admit that some women were really scheming. Even those shrewd businessmen in the business world had to admit that they were inferior to them. This little woman in front of him, however, was simple and transparent. Her thoughts could be easily seen from her face. How could this little woman hide her thoughts from him? He leisurely sipped his glass of vodka, only to see her still sitting on the same spot like a cushion of needles. Her head was lowered in a daze, and he did not know what was on her mind. Hence he asked, "Aren't you going to shower?" "Yes, I'll shower later. I'll wait for you in the room." With that, he walked into the bedroom and didn't look at her again. Yin Shirshir was stunned. She watched the man enter the bedroom but did not move for a long time. After waiting for a while, she thought, he should be asleep, right? Therefore, she looked around and guessed that he must be tired and asleep. Only then did she start to walk around the room. The bedroom was very big. It was connected to the living room, cloakroom, bathroom, study, and even a bar counter. Everything was available. She sat on the sofa for a while before she got up and walked into the bathroom. She took a shower with a messy heart. Before leaving the bathroom, he subconsciously tightened the knot on his bathrobe. In the end, he accidentally tied a dead knot. Only then did he feel slightly relieved. She walked into the bedroom. The small wall lamp was still lit. It was left for her. However, he seemed to have fallen asleep. He was lying on his side, and his tall body occupied 2/3 of the space. She secretly rejoiced and carefully climbed onto the bed. Her movements were light as she was afraid that she would make the slightest noise. However, before she could lie down properly, she felt the movement of his body beside her. This movement scared her so much that her heart stopped beating. While she was still in a daze, the man reached out and pulled her over. His large palm reached for the knot on her bathrobe. Muyaja tugged at the knot on her bathrobe. His lips curled into a devilish smile as he said playfully, "This knot is very tight." Chapter 366. Yin Shirshir's face instantly flushed red. The two were so close to each other that she could still feel the man's hot breath by her ear. Her body stiffened all of a sudden. "Do you think that I can't do anything to you just because you tied a dead knot?" The man leaned close to her ear, and his tone was a little provocative. She was so scared that she shut her eyes tightly, but before she could get what she wanted, with a pop, her vision darkened, and the lights went out. Behind her, Muyaja's deep voice came. "Go to sleep." She heard the man's mocking voice with a smile. "I'll let you off tonight." Even if they slept together and didn't do anything, smelling the orchid fragrance in her hair, it was as if the haze in his heart had been swept away. Even though the beauty was lying in his arms, and she was such a hot little woman, with her curvaceous body pressed tightly against his chest, and her delicate skin intentionally or unintentionally rubbing against his body, he impulsively thought, why should he take pity on her and suppress himself so much? Why not strip her clothes off and barge into her to satisfy his lust? However, when he felt her tense body again, he didn't move in the end. The evil thoughts in his body that he had deliberately suppressed for a long time were already restless, clamoring nonstop. However, he had no choice but to suppress this fire and not think about it. This was the first time. In order to accommodate a woman, he had to suppress the endless desire in his body, just because he didn't want to scare her. Forget it. He would let her off today. But even so, he still had to do something to suppress that nameless fire. Hence, Muyaja lowered his head, pressed her down and kissed her heavily. The tip of his tongue greedily hooked her lips, but he stopped there and hugged her tightly in his arms. Only then did he leave it at that. In the morning, when the first ray of sunlight shone through the gap between the heavy curtains, she woke up. To be precise, she didn't sleep well the entire night. The man behind her was indeed asleep, but his arm was still tightly locked in his embrace, confining her domineeringly. Such a possessive action didn't allow her to struggle at all. The distance between them was so close, and his steady breath lingered around the tip of her nose. She was a little absent-minded. Yin Shirshir carefully broke free from his restraints and slowly got off the bed. She walked into the living room and opened the curtains. Outside the window, the sun was already shining brightly. When she passed by the study, she inadvertently caught a glimpse of a huge picture frame hanging on the wall. With some curiosity, she carefully walked in. Her footsteps were light, and she actually felt a little guilty. Hanging on the wall was a family portrait. It was so exquisite that it was framed. In the photo, Mu Sheng was seated at the head of the table. Beside him were Mu Wanru, Jiang Yishan, Mu Lianqing, and the young Mu Yaja. The photo seemed to have been taken a long time ago, but because it had been carefully stored, it still looked as good as new. Yin Shishir naturally couldn't recognize the others, but Mu Yaja could. When he was young, Mu Yaja didn't have much of a sharp and oppressive aura, but he was still unique among children his age. His handsome features, handsome brows, and cold eyes did not change much from now. He was 90% similar to Yu Yu. Bloodlines were really something incredible. Chapter 367. Just as Yin Shishir was feeling emotional, her peripheral vision fell on a girl beside Mu Sheng. Her gaze changed slightly, and for a moment, her emotions were in turmoil. That girl's face was very familiar, as if she had seen her somewhere before. Her eyebrows, eyes, and even that pair of eyes seemed to be familiar. She felt a strong sense of déjà vu, familiar. Extremely familiar. However, her childhood memories were too hazy, and she could not remember much of them. According to psychology, if one's memories were too dark, one would selectively forget them and be unwilling to recall them. Too many memories of his childhood were dark and gloomy. Subconsciously, Yin Shishir chose to seal them away, and was unwilling to look back on them. Therefore, those memories were too distant, and she had already sealed them away. For a moment, she could not remember where she had seen this girl before. Feeling a little vexed, Yin Shishir's gaze fell on the picture frame on the study table, and her eyes could not help but become as gentle as water. She picked up the small picture frame, and saw Xiao Yichen standing in a dashing military uniform. His handsome face was in high spirits, and he was in high spirits. In contrast to the sickly Yin Tianyu, Xiao Yichen was full of vitality. His every movement seemed to have inherited his father's imposing and high-spirited manner. However, he also inherited Mu Yaja's cold and mature temperament, so it was inevitable that he would be difficult to get close to. This photo was taken a year ago when he was training in the special training camp. The uniform was tailor-made, and it was very fitting. Xiao Yichen's physique was very strong. His shoulders were broad, and his waist was narrow. He had the perfect golden ratio. Despite his young age, he looked very dashing in the military uniform. Yin Shishir picked up the picture frame and looked at Xiao Yichen's face, which seemed to be carved from the same mold as Yu Yu's. Her fingertips slowly caressed the pair of eyebrows in the picture, and her heart ached a little. The two little fellows were so alike. Yin Shishir pursed her lips. She used to miss this child all the time. Blood was connected to the heart, and blood was thicker than water. It was not something that could be cut off by distance. The day after tomorrow was the 1st of June. Children's Day was also the birthday of these two little guys. It was as if he was personally giving the little fellow a gift. Yin Shishir thought longingly in her heart. Immersed in her thoughts, she did not notice the footsteps behind her. It was not until a pair of arms wrapped around her body that she suddenly came back to her senses. Turning her head, she saw Mu Yaja's Junyan, who had just woken up. The man's chin gently rested on her shoulder. As he had just woken up not long ago, his body was not as fierce as before, and his eyes were not as sharp. Instead, there was a kind of exhaustion and decadence. His messy hair slightly covered his eyelids, but it unexpectedly made him look unreasonably sexy. This man was so stylish even when he was dispirited. No wonder so many women flocked to him. What are you looking at? Oh, photos. Mu Yaja took the photo from her hand and glanced at it. This was taken last year. Ha! The little fellow is much taller than last year. How tall is he now? Yin Shishir asked eagerly. She was eager to fill in more information about Xiao Yichen. 140 centimeters. That tall? Yin Shishir was a little surprised. He's much taller than Yu Yu. Chapter 368. Mu Yaja lowered his head to look at her. With a smile he asked, How tall is Yu Yu? About 120 centimeters. Like this. Yin Shishir made a rough comparison. His height was around her waist. This was the result of a physical examination at the kindergarten a month ago. Yin Tianyou's height was considered taller than other children his age. The average height of a boy his age was around 110 centimeters. However, in a way, Yu Yu's growth could not keep up with his age. Mu Yaja was nearly 1. 9 meters tall, while she was 169 meters tall. However, for some reason, Yun Tianyo's growth seemed to be slower than other children of the same age. Compared to Xiao Yichen, however, the difference in height was obvious. Does he take calcium tablets? Yes, he takes them every day, but his growth can't keep up. The mention of Yu Yu's health was undoubtedly a sore point for her. I asked the doctor about it. It might have something to do with him being born prematurely. Most premature babies have stunted growth. When he was born, his body was very weak. Initially, the doctor said that the child's condition was terrible. His heart was congenitally deficient, and his spleen and stomach were not functioning well. He even said that he would not live past the age of 3. At that time, I was on tenterhooks every day, afraid that I couldn't save him. Mu Yaja's handsome brows furrowed slightly. He did not know that Yun Tianyo's health was so bad. He only knew that the child was almost lost. He thought that this woman had hidden the child for her own selfish reasons, and used a groundless excuse to cover up her crime. He even thought that the child would be as healthy as Xiao Yichen. Later, when they met at the hospital and learned from the doctor that his health was not good, he was surprised and stunned, but more than that, he felt sorry for him. Until now, when he learned from Yun Shishir that the child had suffered from so many illnesses since birth, his heart ached so much that it almost suffocated him. Although Yun Shishir spoke of it casually, no one knew how much effort she had put in to protect Yun Tianyu during the most torturous days back then. She had exhausted herself mentally and physically in exchange for Yun Tianyu's rebirth time and time again. Yun Shishir said helplessly. Maybe it's because he developed late. Mu Yaja looked at her side profile solemnly and did not speak. Yun Shishir suddenly turned around and asked, "Oh right. The day after tomorrow is the 2 children's birthdays. Have you prepared any gifts?" Gifts? Mu Yaja raised his handsome brows and shook his head. No. Yun Shishir was taken aback. Aren't you going to give a child a present on his birthday? Mu Yaja said. I have gifts. Basically, whatever he likes, and I'll get someone to buy it. Needless to say, his love for Xiao Yichen was unparalleled. However, as a father, his way of expressing his love was ultimately not that meticulous. It was a little crude. Yun Shishir could not help rebuking him. You should prepare a gift in advance. That way, the child will have a surprise for his birthday. Surprise? Children like surprises? Mu Yaja fell silent. He did not know how to create a surprise. If the child liked it, he would prepare it and buy it. Coaxing a child was probably similar to coaxing a woman. Chapter 369. Yun Shishir seemed to have seen through his thoughts. She said helplessly, a child's favorite moment on their birthday is probably opening their presents. Nothing can replace that kind of anticipation. I don't know what to prepare. Are you free this afternoon? Yes. Yun Shishir hesitated for a moment before she suggested. Are you willing to accompany me to the mall? Coincidentally, I also want to prepare a birthday present for you. Mu Yaja nodded without hesitation. Yun Shishir couldn't help but feel a little excited. She clearly knew that this man was usually very busy. After all, he was in charge of a huge financial group. He must have a lot of work to do. However, when she heard that he was willing to accompany her to the mall, she was a little surprised and pleasantly surprised. She didn't know why, but her mood suddenly improved. Even the weather outside the window became sunny. It was a good day. However, when Yun Shishir finished washing up and walked out of the bathroom, she saw that the man had changed into casual clothes and was sitting on the sofa. She walked over and was about to speak when she saw that there was something wrong with his expression. His whole body sank into the sofa, his head was lowered, and his breathing was a little heavy. She was stunned. He looked like he was in pain. His hands were gripping the armrest of the sofa tightly, and his fingers were hideous. Yun Shishir leaned over slightly, and saw that his forehead was covered in large beads of cold sweat. His handsome face was pale, and it looked a little scary. What's wrong with you? My stomach hurts, Mu Yaja said in a low voice. His voice sounded a little heavy. Yun Shishir suddenly recalled that Mu Yaja's expression was a little strange from the beginning. When he hugged her from behind, she could clearly feel his stiff movements and heavy body. At first, she didn't think too much about it. What she didn't know was that Muyaja had a very serious stomach problem. This stomach problem originated from more than 10 years ago. When he was young, Jiang Yishan passed away from illness. It was a huge blow to him, and his willpower collapsed very quickly. He locked himself in his room, refusing to eat or drink. That period of time was gloomy and heavy, almost without any light. His mother was a very important part of his life, and the separation of life and death was almost unbearable for him. Therefore, after a month of continuous physical torture, his body quickly became thin and he suffered from physiological anorexia. Although his anorexia was cured later, it left behind a very serious illness. If he didn't eat 3 meals a day on time, it would flare up. When the stomach disease acted up, it would be extremely painful. No matter how strong one's willpower was, it would still be difficult for them to endure it. Thus, they would always have stomach medicine at home. Muyaja lifted his heavy eyelids and pointed at the cabinet. Medicine. Only then did Yun Shirsha realize that he was suffering from gastric problems. Yu also had mild gastric problems. When he was suffering from gastric problems, he was also in pain. It was heartbreaking. Following the direction he pointed, Yun Shirsha rummaged through the cabinets and finally found a medicine box. She opened it. Other than the simple medicine for wounds, most of it was gastric tranquilizers. She referred to the dosage of the medicine and took 2 tablets. She held a glass of water and handed it to him. Muyaja reached out to take it, but there was a sharp pain in his stomach. He didn't hold the glass firmly. With a bang, the glass fell to the ground. Water splashed everywhere, and the splashing glass cut Yun Shirsha's arm. Chapter 370. Seeing him fall over, Yun Shirsha did not notice the bleeding wound at all. She hurriedly squatted by the sofa and held his face. Muyaja, get up, sit up. I'll feed you the medicine. There was no response. It was as if he was in so much pain that his consciousness was blurry. Yun Shirsha hugged his shoulders again and tried to help him sit up, but his body was too heavy and she could not exert any strength. Yun Shirsha looked at the pill in her hand in annoyance, then lowered her head to look at the man's handsome face that was twisted in pain. She did not care so much and rushed in to pour a glass of pure water. She walked to the sofa and stuffed a pillow under his head for him to rest on. She held the back of his neck and put the medicine in the water until it dissolved completely. She cupped his face and parted his thin lips. She drank a mouthful of water and carefully passed the water into his mouth. Muyaja's throat moved and he swallowed the water. Yun Shirsha then passed the medicine into his mouth in one go. After a while, the man regained some consciousness. He opened his eyes slightly and vaguely saw Yun Shirsha's nervous face. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Can you sit up? Yun Shirsha saw that his face was pale, and she was worried for a moment. Usually in her impression, this man was always high and mighty, like a king who could summon the wind and rain. He was as powerful as a god. However, she did not expect him to be so weak now that he had gastric problems. He was not angry at all. When she thought of this, she could not help but laugh at her ignorance. No matter how powerful this man was, he was still a person like her. He was not a god. People would eventually fall sick. Illness came like a landslide. No matter how strong a person's body was, there would be times when they fell sick. Was it because he did not eat breakfast when he woke up? She did not know why, but she was blaming herself. Thus she hurriedly said, "Lie down for a while. I'll make breakfast for you." She had just gotten up when the man suddenly grabbed her arm. With a tug, Yun Shirsha lost her balance and fell into his arms. "What are you doing?" She was a little angry, a little anxious, and a little worried. She was afraid that she would fall so heavily and crush him. Muyaja held her neck with one hand, and his other hand slowly caressed her lips. There was a trace of dark sharpness in his eyes. "Where are you going?" "I'm making breakfast for you. You have gastric problems. It must be, because you don't eat 3 meals regularly." Yun Shirsha replied. She wanted to get up again, but the man held her in his arms. But this time his arm was firmly locked onto her waist, not giving her any chance to escape. What are you doing?" she asked in annoyance. She frowned and was slightly annoyed. Her tone was coquettish, and her eyes revealed helplessness and embarrassment. Muyaja lowered his head and looked at her. He could see the angry expression on her face. Seeing him staring at her with a deep gaze, Yin Shirshir was a little stunned. She pursed her red lips and bit her lip gently, looking a little uneasy. However, such a small action in his eyes had an inexplicable charm and shyness. It was even seductive. The way she bit her lip was so cute that his body, which was originally tense because of his illness, started to heat up. Chapter 371. Thus he said, "I'm not eating breakfast. I want to eat you." When Yin Shirshir heard this, her face stiffened and she said dejectedly, "Hey, I really lost to you. Your stomach is acting up. Why are you still so restless?" "Not only is my stomach acting up, my lovesickness is also acting up, don't you know?" How long had it been since he had touched this woman? He couldn't remember the number of times. He only knew that his body was constantly clamoring, wanting to possess her, penetrate her, and even wanted to integrate her into his bones and blood. How long had it been since he had tasted that feeling? He missed it so much. He missed it so much that even though his stomach was acting up, the desire in his body was constantly stirring. He was like a youthful and ignorant youth who had tasted the forbidden fruit for the first time, wanting more. Yin Shirshir was a little annoyed as she rebuked, "Muyaja, are you a scoundrel? Your body is already like this, and you still..." Halfway through her words, she couldn't continue no matter what and only felt ashamed. Her tender and white face was stained with a blush of shyness. She lowered her eyes and wished she could dig a hole in the ground right now to bury her burning face. She might as well just bury it. Muyaja saw the shyness on her face and felt that it was a little interesting, but also a little funny. He boasted that he wasn't a man whose lower body was swayed by his emotions. He was different from those second-generation hedonistic sons who liked to play with women. When it came to women, he had always had self-control, and even had misophobia. But this woman was simply a charming and fragrant evil concubine. What she had was the ability to make men obsessed with her. Even if it was in ancient times, no matter how wise the king was, he would probably be like King Yu of Zhou for Baoxi. In order to win a beauty's smile, he would use the beacon fire to play with the feudal lords. He wrapped his arms around her neck and brought her face closer. A pair of handsome eyes slowly swept over her face for a long time, allowing his face to be immersed in her hair, unscrupulously smelling the freshness and charm of her hair. At the same time, because of this suppression, his body was tense to the point that it was almost painful. The man slowly opened his sharp eyes and met that jade-like face again. Suddenly he asked coldly, "Do you think that having sex with me is a shameful thing?" Her face was slightly hot, but she didn't make a sound, as if she didn't agree or disagree. The man smiled and said faintly, "Woman, do you know, scientists say that an adult's normal routine should be 3 to 4 times a week." Yin Shirshir saw him suddenly speaking and she was a little unable to react. Then the man asked further, "Think about it. How long has it been since I touched you? Don't tell me normal needs?" Yin Shirshir was inexplicably at a loss for words. He said it so righteously and she couldn't refute him, but she felt that there was something wrong with his logic. Muyaja played with a strand of her hair, twirling it around his finger and playing with it. His breath was like orchids. "I only have you as my woman. I have my needs. If you don't let me touch you, who else should I touch? Moreover, you're a woman and I'm a man. Is this kind of love between a man and a woman shameful in your eyes?" Yin Shirshir thought for a moment and suddenly said with a red face, "You obviously have a fiancé." The man's handsome face raised a trace of inexplicable meaning. His eyes were like torches as his long and narrow eyes narrowed slightly, with a hint of deep meaning. So this was what she cared about. Chapter 372. Jealous that he had a woman in name, but not in reality by his side? Yin Shirshir felt a little uncomfortable being stared at by him, and wanted to brush it off. "Let's not talk about it anymore. Does your stomach still hurt? Are you jealous? No, you clearly are. If you're jealous, then let me tell you, you don't have to think too much." Muyaja hugged her waist and pulled her towards him. He turned his body slightly and pressed her under his body. He pinched her chin and covered her lips with his. He sealed her lips with a gentle kiss. After a simple and charming kiss, he looked at her and smiled. "You only need to know that my body wants you. I don't have any feelings for other women." As he spoke, he grabbed her hand that she didn't know how to move and guided it downwards until her fingertips touched that mysterious territory. Through the material of his clothes, she could vaguely feel that arrogant posture. Thus, her face became even hotter, as if blood was about to drip out. "What about you? Don't you want me?" The man was so gentle beside her ear that his warm breath curled around her earlobe, burning her ears and neck. This woman's body seemed to be extremely sensitive. Even a gentle touch would make her blush, not to mention his advances. Her entire body was burning. "You," Yin Shirshir said angrily. "That's enough." Muyaja didn't give her a chance to refute and blocked her mouth with a sentence. "I only want you. I don't have any feelings for other women." Yin Shirshir blushed at his words again. Muyaja played with her lips gently, his fingertips caressing those cherry lips that made one drool, but he said word by word. "As for the status, I'll give it to you. But now is not the time." "Muyaja, is this considered a courtship?" Yin Shirshir asked all of a sudden. The man's face froze. "But your stomach is acting up. If you don't know how to control yourself, you'll suffer when the time comes." Yin Shirshir lectured him seriously. Her words were a prophecy or a curse. Just as she finished speaking, his stomach, which was already feeling better, experienced another day of cramping pain. Was this woman a curse master? This stomach pain, speak of the devil. Did she have to spoil the fun like this? A certain man felt very sullen. In order to eat this woman, since she didn't like his forceful methods, he had to persuade her with reason and emotions. Just as he was about to eat her, the stomach pain came again. Damn it. If your stomach hurts, then have a good rest. Yin Shirshir threw him on the sofa. As she pushed open the door to leave, she said, "Be good and wait for me. I'll cook noodles for you." Muyaja could only stare at her back view as she left. Seeing the fragrant meat in his mouth fly away, he didn't have any other thoughts. Yin Shirshir closed the door and held her heart with both hands. Her heart was thumping. "Status, I'll give it to you." The man's firm words kept echoing in her ears. She didn't dare to let her imagination run wild. She took a deep breath and quickly went to cook noodles for the man.